the most unlikely event that we would need to evacuate the building. We just have these two doors from the main chamber leading out and the one door from the chamber over there. In that event, don't use the elevator, but please use the two stairs going down to the first floor. And then there's only one stair going out the front to leave the building. Just want everybody to have that situational awareness just in case. All right. First, we have a proclamation honoring Dot Scott, and I'd like to ask her to come forward along with her family members and join me up here. This is on the occasion of her pending retirement of over 21 years of leadership and service to our community as head of the Charleston chapter, Charleston branch of the NAACP. Dot, please come forward, and your family is welcome to join us up here. Y'all come on up. We will, and let me share this proclamation with everyone, if I may. Whereas the city of Charleston is honored to recognize civil rights leader and businesswoman Dot Scott, president of the historic Charleston branch of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored Peoples, NAACP, for 21 years as she looks to retirement. And whereas Dot Scott was born in North Charleston, grew up in Hughie, and remains active in our childhood church, Zion United Methodist, she earned a bachelor's degree from Charleston Southern University, a master's from Webster, and is a graduate of the Richard Riley School of Divinity at Furman University. Whereas after retiring as a sales and service manager at Bell South AT&T after 31 years, Dot Scott then continued her commitment to bettering civil rights, fair and equal treatment for all citizens, and improving race relations as a member of Charleston branch NAACP in the early 80s, later named president in 2001. And whereas despite the numerous awards, accolades, recognitions received over the years, Dot Scott holds that her greatest accomplishment as president of the Charleston branch is the partnerships built between the organization and the ACLU, the YWCA, the League of Women Voters, the Lupus Foundations, other organizations who have advocated for minorities, even if their memberships weren't. And whereas in order to better serve our communities, we need people like Dot Scott who will step up, who will advocate for those who are being discriminated against and who are suffering injustice in our community. She has led that fight for 21 years with a passion. She's been so personally committed. I'll say she's tenacious when she needs to be, because she's passionate about the rights and fair treatment for all members of our city and society. So now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim today it's Dot Scott Day in the City of Charleston. God bless you.
Thank you to the mayor of the city of Charleston. Gotta make it short for little people. And for all of those organizations that he mentioned that have been supportive and allowed us to work with them, and they work with us. I want to say thank you so much. The city of Charleston has been my home for the last 41 years. And trust me, I'm not going anywhere. Finding something else to do. And I've already decided what it's going to be. But here again, thank you so much. I'm disappointed. My daughter worked late, my grandson at school. So they're not here, but I'm going to go show this off to them. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
There'll never be another Dot Scott. I've worked with her over the years, and the work that she's done in this city for civil rights and the results that she's obtained, Mayor, will last way beyond her years. And for that, based upon where we're headed as a city and as a country, we need more Dot Scotts more than ever.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Dot, I know you're not going to really retire. But I just want to tell you, thank you on behalf of our community. You may not remember this, but you and I sat together when we were interviewing police chiefs, candidates for police chief. And I'm going to just tell you how much I learned from you during that interview process. And it's just also important for all of us as citizens, no matter what our role is on city council or any type of community leadership, we can never stop learning from others. And you, above all, you're a teacher because you teach us to keep our minds wide open and look for the good of people. But you're such a strong advocate for your community. You're going to be missed, but I know you're not going too far. So thank you for your service. And I personally thank you for what you've done to help me develop more of a person as well.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you all who may not know Dot Scott in this chamber, she's a person of the character that if she's doing well, she's not satisfied with that until her community is doing well. And you don't replace that. She has the ability to galvanize others to work on behalf of those who are less than. And that's an exceptionalism that I don't care where you parachute down in this country, every community needs. And the last compliment I'd like to give her is she's a pretty little lady. How can you go through that kind of stress? And look, she retired from a Fortune 500 company, and she could have retired on Golden Pond and not stay engaged. But I would say she took on a larger task, and you really did. So thank you all for what you've done for all of us so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and colleagues and council and everyone else who is watching. I met Dot Scott years ago, but I started out way back when, like in the civil rights movement, Brother Councilman Waring's father. I was about 14 years old and I was a member of the NWC during that time. And that's when everything was kind of cheap, you know, and $10 at that time. And when I met Dot Scott coming up through the years, and Dot Scott was always a person that was adamant of what she was doing and what she was about. It was always about community and people in need. And she'll go out her way to try to assist, you know, and she used to go beyond. And I used to say that, I used to ask her, I said, how do you get all this energy? Because I sure don't have it. But she is adamant about it, and she will fight you tooth and nail for what she believes in. And see, that's one thing I always admired about her. She's not going to stop, and she's not going to give up. And right now, we're going to miss her because I don't know who's going to come behind her and do that same thing. And we need someone who is going to come and be adamant about community. And that's everyone who lives in the community. And that's the person that she was always, ever since I met her. But if you want a good fight, she's ready for that fight. And I want to thank her very much for just staying there and going through it. I know she got beat up a lot of time, but she still was right there fighting back for everyone in the community. So I would like to thank her and thank you, Dot, for everything you have done over the period of years for everyone that lives in the city of Charleston and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dot, again. Anyone else? Well, God bless. Thank you for your service. I would like to just let everyone know, and we're working on a little special stipend to honor Dot Scott in her name with a contribution to the Charleston branch NAACP. And if anyone would like to participate in adding to that stipend, we're gonna gather a basket in your honor, Dot, and help preserve the work that you've been doing. So wanted to make that announcement. All right. So next, I want to honor a Charleston businesswoman who has been designated as the South Carolina Latino Business Person of the Year. And so will Nilsey Rapallo, please join me up here along with Vanessa Mota. And as you can see, Nilsi is somewhat dressed for the occasion, is she not? Wow. So I will share this proclamation with everyone as well. Please come on up if you'd like. Whereas the city of Charleston has proclaimed September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in the city of Charleston in accordance with the national observance, we announced that Hispanic Heritage Month calendar of events through our Office of Cultural Affairs. City of Charleston honors the Latinx community for its contributions to a more prosperous city of Charleston and recognizes the potential to create stronger business development and entrepreneurial relationships that we are more inclusive of the Latinx community. The city of Charleston acknowledges the work of Vanessa Mota, who is back here behind me. She's Chief Executive Officer of Mota Enterprises of Columbia and establishing an award recognizing outstanding accomplishments in the business sector in South Carolina and the presentation of Charleston, South Carolina Latino Business of the Year Award to Ms. Nilsi Rapallo, owner of Wellness and Beyond LLC and Circulos de Bienestar LLC. And whereas the city of Charleston extends its congratulations to Ms. Nilsi and recognizes her many contributions. Listen to this, y'all. She's been a member of the Minority Affairs Commission of the South Carolina Governor's Office, the Minority Business Enterprise Advisory Board of the City of Charleston, the Latinx Advisory Council to the Mayor of the City of Charleston. Ms. Nilsi is a founding member of the Hispanic Business Association and facilitates training in Spanish for the Community Business Academy at Low Country Local First. She, whereas the city of Charleston highly values Ms. Nilsi's professional work as a clinical psychologist as well and certified life coach. She has worked in the mental health field since 1996 in the United States and Colombia with culturally diverse patients and has conducted research on mental health and infertility issues. Ms. Nilsi Rapallo is currently an eye movement trauma technique specialist for the South Carolina Department of Mental Health and the author of the award-winning book, Spiritual Immigration, A Path to Inspiration and Wellness. Whereas in honor of this important award recognition, the people of Charleston are urged to reflect upon the wider contributions of Hispanic and Latino Americans to our city, state, nation, and indeed to our world. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, proclaim October 11th is Latino Business of the Year Day in the city of Charleston, honoring Ms. Nilsi Rapallo. Congratulations. Ms. Nilsi, would you like to make some remarks, or Vanessa?
Mayor Tecklenburg, City Council members, Latinx Advisory Board, Mota Enterprises staff, and community members. I am honored to receive the Charleston Business of the Year Award 2022. And I want to acknowledge the leadership of Mota Enterprises for recognizing the Latino businesses in South Carolina. My deepest gratitude to my fellow Hispanic Business Association board members for their support in creating a nonprofit for a time was only living in my dreams when I found myself becoming a business owner. There would be enough words to say gracias to my dear Jamie Haley and Jackie Berger, former and present executive directors of Low Country Local First, for giving the Hispanic community La Academia, a community business, a curriculum in Spanish, that I was the first Spanish-speaking graduate of that program, as today La Academia has graduated 70 Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs and counting. As a wellness consultant, podcast producer, author, and teacher, my power comes from the love of my community. And now, please raise your hand if you are an immigrant or your parents are immigrants. Thank you. Be sure that you are not today just honoring a woman and her business. Today, you are celebrating a tribe of immigrants who are here to make this city diverse and productive. Gracias for making Wellness and Beyond LLC a reality since 2009. I dedicate this award to my family, friends, business partners, fellow board members, clients, and students currently waiting for me to celebrate with food and music as Latino like to celebrate. Of course, everybody's invited. Mayor Tecklenburg and community members, be assured that my commitment for creating opportunities for others to thrive and shine will continue. Thank you.
I have other copies for you as well.
And her award will be given.
You want to start?
I just want to say thank you to everyone. I'm not going to take your time. As you can see why she was chosen over several business owners every year. They go through a board, an education and business board. Once, to choose the one for this year or for every year. I just want to say that it will be October 14th at the State House at 10 a.m. where she will receive her award with all the other recipients around the state. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Nilsi, you're a terrific role model for small business, women business, Latino, and thank you for your service on our city's Latino Advisory Committee as well. You're just terrific. Thank you so much. I also had, I think, the proclamation in Spanish. Everyone can be thankful that I did not attempt to read it in Spanish. Even Bishop Jern let me know that my French was not nearly as good as I thought it was. So I can assure you my Spanish would not pass muster. So we have one more proclamation. I'd like to ask Councilmember Brady to join me up here, along with Courtney Plotner, who's President and CEO of the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired of South Carolina, and Ann Reed, their Chief Development Officer. And I've got a proclamation for y'all as well. Thank you for being with us. So whereas the visual health of our residents is essential to continued well-being and vitality of our families, businesses, and communities, whereas access to free skills, training, and support services is essential for health, safety, functionality, and continued well-being, 7.7% of South Carolinians over the age of 65 report a visual impairment in a 2019 study, and rates of vision loss are projected to double by 2030 due to our aging population. Whereas the city of Charleston recognizes vision rehabilitation services as essential services to aid individuals after losing their vision, and that it is imperative to adapt, develop travel skills, become less dependent on sighted caregivers, participate more in their communities, and join the workforce. Whereas the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired South Carolina, a nonprofit founded way back in October of 1936, has provided services to help adults who are blind or visually impaired for 86 years. The Association for the Blind provides free vision rehabilitation services for all adults with visual impairments in South Carolina, with a focus on Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester counties, and provides skills training, education, and support services in Charleston through community-based trainings and a virtual training platform. And whereas the month of October contains National World Sight Day on October 13th, Association for the Blind birthday on October 14th, and the National White Cane Day on October 15th. Whereas the observance of October as the Association for the Blind's Awareness Month will help raise awareness of visual disabilities, the challenges individuals with visual impairments face daily, the capabilities individuals with visual disabilities have, particularly in the workplace, and the importance of vision rehabilitation in our community. Whereas we urge all citizens throughout the city of Charleston to join in this celebration and work together to increase understanding of blindness, visual impairments, and to raise awareness of the need for appropriate and accessible vision rehabilitation services. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, proclaim October is the Association for the Blind Awareness Month in South Carolina and the City of Charleston. So thank you for the fine work that you do, and appreciate y'all being with us this evening, and I would ask if you'd like to make some remarks.
Mayor Tecklenburg, members of the council, my name is Courtney Plotner. I'm the president and CEO of the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired South Carolina, or ABVI. We are honored by this proclamation declaring October ABVI Awareness Month. We use this month to raise awareness of the overwhelming need for vision rehabilitation in our community and the efforts ABVI is making to address this need. To put this need into perspective, a new study estimated that there are 12.5 million people in the United States over the age of 40 experiencing a visual impairment. That number is expected to increase by 118% by 2050. And there are less than 3,800 individuals in our country certified to provide most of the specialized vision rehabilitation training. The retirement of these individuals exponentially outweighs the new graduates in our field. Vision rehabilitation services teach individuals with a visual impairment the adaptive skills necessary to do everything from the moment you wake up in the morning till the time you go to bed at night. So setting your alarm, making your breakfast, getting dressed, securing transportation, getting to work, etc. Anybody who loses their vision needs vision rehabilitation. So if I or you were to lose our vision, we would come to ABVI for services because ABVI provides the most comprehensive vision rehabilitation services for adults in our area. And only a tiny portion of vision rehabilitation is covered by insurance. The need is great. We are drowning in it as we try to convince funders and grantors, many of whom may have not been affected by vision loss, the importance of our services. How much healthcare crisis and gap is created when vision rehabilitation doesn't exist, not to mention the increase in poverty. So recognition like this proclamation help us add weight to our messaging surrounding this need. So on behalf of our board, our staff, and especially the individuals we serve, thank you again for your support. We are truly grateful.
So thank you for all our proclamations, y'all who came this evening. Two other quick announcements, if I may. One of which today we had here at City Hall an announcement of being able to move forward with our Anson Street Burial Memorial. It's going to be an incredible fountain right next to the Gilliard. And Nigel Redden and Brenda Lauterbach are kind of leading the charge on that. It was really started by Dr. O and the Gullah Society to commemorate those 36 individuals who were found buried at the Gilliard site. But here was the nice news today. The leadership of Wells Fargo Foundation were here and they presented us a $300,000 check to help that move forward. So I just thought I'd share that with council because that makes it a go project and we're going to be able to move that forward. It's going to be really a terrific addition to the city. And then if council will indulge me, I did, you first met just at our last meeting, our new emergency manager, Ben Almquist. And of course, we didn't know what kind of impacts we would see from Hurricane Ian. And luckily it wasn't nearly as bad as it might have been. Many folks said we dodged a bullet, but I just wanted to thank and kind of congratulate Ben. I watched him firsthand in the MEOC and he really did a terrific job leading our team during this incident, and asked Ben to give you just a very brief report on our experience with Hurricane Ian. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. As the mayor said, we had what you would describe as a near miss with Hurricane Ian. Really hit north of us, Pawleys Island, Myrtle Beach area. They got hit fairly hard. They're still dealing with a lot of the fallout from that. Here locally, we are still working on debris management operations. That's going to be an ongoing process. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just loading things up in the truck and going. We have to follow FEMA and DHEC guidelines. Everything has to be documented. It's a very meticulous process. So it takes a little bit longer than we would like, a lot longer than the public would like. I do want to say city staff was outstanding. I wasn't sure what to expect coming in, this being my first event, and we had not had an opportunity to do any kind of training or anything like that. World-class professionals here. It made my job tremendously easier than what I've had to experience in the past in certain areas. So very thankful for that. And I think we've got a great foundation to move forward. Of course, we are always going to look to improve. We're starting our after action process right now, looking for our strengths, our areas for improvement, and then our opportunities to enhance our capabilities, be it through partnerships, identifying new assets we can bring in. But we are in a very good place right now. I do want to stress, though, how near a miss this was. If that storm was moving 5 miles an hour faster, we would have had a direct hit. So that shows the unpredictability of these storms. I believe at one point there was an estimated storm surge that would have hit 10.0 that would have breached our storm walls and everything and caused serious flooding throughout the area. So very fortunate that it went north of us. For the storm that we did get, it's what we expected. Stronger than normal flood events, high winds, lost power in certain areas for a good period of time. But what we saw is that our internal capabilities were able to handle the vast majority of the effects we saw. So that's a very good starting point for us right now. And as I said, that goes back largely to the efforts of city staff, city leadership over the past years, taking these kinds of things very seriously. With that, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Ben. And I just want to reiterate, I promise I'm not keeping track, but when I showed up at the MEOC last week or at the beginning of the incident, day before, Daniel Fleeces, who you all know, he said, well, Mayor, this is the 7th time we've activated the MEOC for storms since you've been mayor. So we're getting, I've had a little practice myself, but I'm never more proud of having the honor of working with my colleagues, the employees of the city of Charleston, as I am watching them prepare, be ready, recover. The resiliency of our team is incredible. This was in relative terms, just a dusting up from Hurricane Ian, I admit, but they were ready to respond to whatever happened, and they would have stayed at it until they needed to finish the job. They're really an amazing team, and it's an honor to work with all of y'all. So once again, let's thank our employees. Thank you, Ben. Glad to have you on the team. All right, next we've got a couple of public hearings, and the first one up is regarding a petition we received, and we're following due process to have a public hearing regarding a request to close and abandon a portion of North Sterling Drive. And looks like we're going to have a little presentation about such, and then we'll ask folks to come forward and give your comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. So this will be a very short presentation. This process was initiated in June when we received a petition from some adjacent neighbors to this particular roadway, asking for a closure or an abandonment of this roadway. You've got Fort Johnson over here, Harborview Road. Those are the two main causeways that kind of frame this general area. But if you look on this map, you'll see the slight turn in the center with the lake down here to the bottom. This is the area we're talking about. It's 18 feet across, it's 52 feet in length. So that is the particular area that we're talking about. The initial petition started with a request to abandon it or close it to prevent traffic from coming through this neighborhood down Sweet Bay Road or down Sterling Drive here at the top as well. We've received a lot of communication, both for and against from the neighborhood. And it's great that everyone's so involved and passionate about this topic one way or the other. So at this point, I think the final petition we have received from the adjacent landowners in October was a request that we potentially bollard off either side of this street to only allow pedestrian or golf cart traffic. Through this process, staff has gotten a lot of feedback and requests from CCSD, from James Island, from the county. So what we are suggesting tonight is that if you take any action, it would be to put this back at Public Works Committee and allow staff to provide additional information and potential suggestions.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I apologize. I would like to put that motion on the floor just so. Okay, thank you. We would like to send this back to Public Works for further discussion. And I would like to emphasize that the city is not considering abandonment of this road from what we've received from staff. But we would like staff to answer our citizens' questions and be able to possibly give 3 recommendations in Public Works Committee and discuss all possibilities with the community residents, the town of James Island, and the county. Okay.
Just a point of order, we need to have the public hearing
Okay.
and then we can take action on your motion. I think we can table it until after our comments are made.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, we have 2 ways to participate tonight. One is the public hearing, which actually didn't need to sign the sign-up sheet, but a number of folks did sign up the sign-up sheet for our public participation. So we're going to go through that list first and call out the people who signed up specifically for North Sterling Drive matter. And then we'll also just open it, the floor up if anybody else wants to come forward and speak about this issue. If y'all don't mind, we got a number of folks here. We got a lot of business tonight. Could I ask that we just keep remarks to a minute? And that's going to let us know whether you're for or against it. That's for sure. And one common thing we ask to do that we have no public outbursts or applause or yelling or anything like that. If you'd like to ask people in the audience if they agree with you or not, a show of hands would be appropriate. But I do ask that folks would refrain from any kind of outbursts. So we'll go to Madam Clerk and she'll start calling out names and then we'll open up the floor as well.
Michael Williams. And if we could get your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Michael Williams. I live at 746 Willow Lake, James Island, South Carolina. I stand here in opposition to the original petition that proposed the closure of the road and the dam. I actually live on the lake just a few doors down. Received 0 notice of this. There was 0 communication of this. The whole thing has lacked transparency. At best, this petition was poorly considered, and at worst, it was duplicitous and possibly self-serving. The general consensus of the neighborhood, from what I can tell, and the folks that I've spoken to, is that this be sent back to committee or sent back to the neighborhood, perhaps better, and to take the time to fully consider the impact on the neighborhood, because many neighborhoods feed into this little strip. It is a key artery for pedestrians and joggers and strollers and golf carts.
Time.
Thank you very much.
Taylor Graves.
Mr. Mayor, before we go forward, can I just ask a point of clarification here? Who are the petitioners? Who's petitioned for this? Okay.
May have been others.
All right.
I think they're residents on the street. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Are they residents of the city of Charleston?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Mhm.
And if we could get your name and address.
My name is Taylor Long Graves. I live at 699 Willow Lake Road. I'm at the very end of the dirt road. If you don't stop at the stop sign, you'll end up in my front yard. I use this road regularly with my children, with my husband, not only to go to the park, but also to go to the yacht club, to go to Wampler, where some of my neighbors and friends live. This is an integral part of our neighborhood. It's gorgeous. If you've never been there, come, but drive slowly and carefully. If anything changes, it would be changing history in our neighborhood. I bought this house with my husband in 2018 because of this dirt road. I believe that the ethic of the city of Charleston is to promote the community's access to the water. By closing this in any shape or form, you are limiting that and doing the exact opposite. I do believe that traffic has increased in all roads, but not exponentially on this one to create any difference in neighborhood roads, and certainly not enough to close it. I think the most important thing is the connectivity of the neighborhood and access of
Time.
emergency vehicles. Thank you.
Kyle Graves.
Mayor Tecklenburg, Council, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Kyle Graves. I also live at 699 Willow Lake Road, and you just heard from the more polished perspective of our household. But after reading this petition in the bottom of the ninth, if you will, there are three main things. It has to do with dust accumulation, the speed of traffic, and the condition of the bridge. I think all of these are addressable issues. I relate it to the homes on the road. You know, if you got a leaking roof and the grass is a little too long, you don't abandon the house. You fix the problem and you move on. And I think that's exactly what we need to do with this situation.
Sandra Russell.
Mayor, council members, thank you. My name is Sandra Russell. I live at 752 Willow Lake Road. I was concerned about the property of the petitioners had used South Carolina Code 57910, which does request the abandonment of the causeway. So I wanted to make that clear that that was requested. And so many of us are opposed to that. That road has been there. I've been there almost 30 years. The road was there at the time that I purchased my property. We were not given any notice, and that code that they used did require that return receipt mail notice would be sent out to the people in the area that it affected. So if you look up South Carolina Code of Laws, I have it right here for you. But it is required. And so we have not received any kind of notice about that. Also, there was varying statements throughout the petition, but a statement is not a fact. And there's no documentation or evidence to back up. Thank you.
Mary Murray.
I'd like to clarify that the intent of the petition was not to abandon the road and not to abandon the causeway, but merely preserve the lake, preserve the earthen dam by restricting the vehicular traffic that has increased exponentially. I understand there was a traffic study showing multiple vehicles over the course of a weekend, trucks, trailers, characterized as buses, but we assume there was no school bus and school was not in session. It is a safety issue. If the city can assure us that that earthen dam is safe to traverse, so be it. That's why I'm pleased to hear that this is being tabled so that council can make an effective decision. Are we safe going over it? That is the intent of the petition, not to cut off the neighborhood, but to keep it safe and keep that lake alive. Thank you.
Shane Howe. I'm sorry, I think you were signed up for redistricting. Nick.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Saltmarsh, 681 North Sterling Drive. I'm one of the few properties that actually adjoin to this earthen dam, and we are highly opposed to the closing of this dam or this part of the road for various reasons, mainly the connectivity to other neighborhoods. But this whole process, living and touching the piece of road, we got notice 10 days ago. We were not confronted about this. We were not consulted about this. So it came as a surprise. Secondly, traffic has increased minimally since we've lived there. I've got two small boys. They go out they play in the yard, they're on the road, they're on the bikes. And at no point do I fear for the safety of my children. So the traffic cause is not really of concern. It is a dirt road and that restricts the speed of the traffic as it is. And really, we are opposed of this entire petition.
Hannah French.
My name is Hannah French and I live at 657 Beauregard Street, just down the road from North Sterling. My husband and I take both of our small children on walks, bike rides, golf cart rides, and sometimes by car down North Sterling. It allows us to get to Sunrise Park, to Picnic Park, and to the James Island Yacht Club in a safe manner. If this road was to close, we would have to navigate the traffic circle and the much heavier traffic on Fort Johnson. The other thing I want to bring up is I question the integrity of this traffic study, as my husband and I witnessed a member living on North Sterling repetitively going over the traffic sensor in an effort to alter the numbers. That's it. Thank you.
Michael Williams.
Oh, sorry. That's
You're on both lists. Yep, already spoken. And I think we have Francis McKeever.
Thank you. I'm Francis McKeever. I live at 698 Willow Lake Road. I'm a 44-year resident of the Eastwood subdivision. I'm also a 100% disabled veteran. I've served in 3 wars: Vietnam, the first Gulf War, and called from retirement for the second Gulf War for 5 years. I contracted central lobal ischemia, which is a COPD form, because I was involved in the Gulf War oil well fires. The dust on that road keeps me inside my house because I can't breathe that dust. One way to control that dust is to eliminate some of the traffic on that road, particularly the big, large vehicles. Thank you very much.
And those were all the speakers that had signed up. Was there anyone you wanted to open it up?
Yes.
My name is David Andrews. I'm at 706 Clearview Drive. I'll reiterate everything that has been said. I would like to know how many people were on the petition that was put in, if that's available. The other point I was going to make, if the road's closed down, Wildwood is the next direct route to Sunrise Park, and our kids would have to go out on Fort Johnson to get there. So I want to know what the residents of Wildwood think about their traffic going up with every car that doesn't go down that road going down Wildwood. So.
And the answer, I do believe the petition would be available as a public record. So you would be able to get that from us. All right. Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. My name's John Gamble. I live at 519 Sweet Bay Road. The dirt road runs right into where I've lived. I've lived there since 1998. The dirt road's been access to Dimitri Park since it's been there. It'll cut a neighborhood in half and put every kid on Fort Johnson Road, which is a main thoroughfare to the wildlife department. It cuts the neighborhood in half, and it takes the community involvement. You know, a lot of people walk the street, run the street, and it's used for vehicular traffic. As far as safety, it survived a 1,000-year flood without any problem. Safety and better our neighborhood, it's best to keep it the public road for ingress and egress to the park. That's all I need to say.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I live at 541 Wampler Drive, which is just off the dirt road. And
can we get your name?
Trina Turberville. And all I want to say is I thought this was going to be thrown out tonight because I didn't think the petition was entered properly. But my one thing I have to say is the traffic in the neighborhood is bad because of Dimitri Park, because it's not monitored. The dirt road is the only safe place I can walk on. So it'd be a shame if it was cut down, and also because it connects us to all our neighbors. Thank you.
And was there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, we did receive some comments for the public hearing. A petition was submitted to the Public Service Department in support of keeping the dirt road causeway on North Sterling Drive open. The petition was signed by 86 people. 28 listed their addresses as being within the city. 52 listed their addresses were not in the city, and 6 signatures did not specify. The Public Service Department also received 59 comments opposed to the road closure, 5 comments supporting the road closure, and 15 comments supporting closure for vehicular traffic only. An amended petition was submitted to the Public Service Department by Mary Murray, Deanna McGuire, and Dennis McKeever, asking that the dam spillway and adjoining road be maintained in such a manner as to permit foot traffic, bicycles and strollers, and golf carts in a safe manner and preserve the existing character of the area, and stating that amending the use of the causeway from a motor vehicle thoroughfare to a greenway would further preserve the dam and spillway, to ensure the freshwater lake was not further compromised by a potential dam failure and would address safety concerns. One citizen provided a comment online in support of the road section being closed due to safety concerns, as the amount of traffic made it unsafe for her children, and the road could not accommodate the large vehicles that traveled on it daily. And those were all the comments we received.
Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, it does come to council. We had a motion on the floor, or one made. Would you mind restating your motion?
Sure, yes, I would just like to restate, I want to keep that motion on the floor to move this back to committee. I would also like to address the process. Councilmember Seekings, you and I, a similar situation with the speed limit. We just worked on that. We saw that in council tonight. I certainly think that this is a process that we should look at, and how this came to commit, petitioner coming to committee, coming to council, having the public hearing. I certainly feel like, I think it's a great conversation this community has been having. Their involvement has been extraordinary. So if there is something that we can improve upon, we can certainly do that. But I would like to discuss the process, legal, if that's something we can also add to your plate. But again, like I said, I'd like to keep that motion on the floor to move this back to committee.
Great. All right. Any further discussion? Councilmember
I
Seekers.
just have a couple of quick questions. Well, one, who owns / maintains this road? Is this a city road? It's ours? We maintain it too?
I can answer that.
I got it.
Okay.
It's ours. Okay, thanks.
Terrific. So we're going to refer this to committee. Councilmember Shade.
I know I'm very forgettable. Julia, if you can answer this one question for me that Ms. Murray brought up. This is something about a dam that crosses over this lake.
So this is one of the issues we're trying to work out, because the county, these are original county roads, okay? So the county gave it to the city and we willingly took it. So the question of whether or not this is a spillway, a dam, or just a pipe with a dirt road across it, we're still trying to figure that out. A lot of unanswered questions. So that's one of the reasons why we're asking for more time.
And while you're here, so is this a feeder road to other roads within this neighborhood?
Well, it connects on both sides.
It's interconnectivity, yes.
Okay. I'm sure we'll get more information at committee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gregg.
Who's responsible for owning and maintaining the lake and spillway?
Now, this is an interesting question, and one that we're also trying to work out. So the is it marsh? What is that? It's wetlands on the other side of the road, not the lake, but the top. Okay. It's a homeowners association that is shown as the owner of that particular TMS number. Now, whether or not the homeowners association has been maintaining that, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. We haven't gotten that far, but if we do any work, clearing any vegetation or anything from that pipe, it's a core issue because we've got saltwater marsh that we would be affecting. More core permitting.
Any other council member comments?
Thank
Councilmember
thank you,
Appel?
Mr. Mayor. And while we're, looking at improving our public notice procedures, is there a way that maybe we can capture all the emails that have been sent thus far on this matter? And just keep like an interested party notification list just in the interim, so we can make sure that everybody that came out here tonight is looped in when it goes back to committee, what actions are being taken, so we can kind of keep that line of communication.
I think that'd be possible. Madam Clerk, and
I think most of the emails were sent to public service, but I'm sure we can put a list together of all of the email addresses that they received. So citizens can remain updated.
That sounds good. That way we can just keep everybody in the loop. Thank you.
Councilmember Parker.
I will certainly be sure to take the lead on that, Mr. Appel.
Great.
Councilmember Waring.
Listen, I want to thank everybody for coming out. And the reason I say that is normally on something like this, if people didn't show up, it would be a very eerie feeling. If you only had 2-3 people that turned out. So this is a situation where I really think I've seen the road. It is pretty. It almost looks like something like a part of Charlestown Landing over there. So I think we got a good chance to take some lemons and make some lemonade out of this one, especially with, I'm glad Council Lady Parker has been engaged with the neighborhood. Look forward to working through this one. I think this will have good results on the other end. Thank you.
Right. So if I may add a comment or two, I've been on North Sterling Drive. I was over there invited by some citizens some months ago regarding the potential development of this parcel, a couple of parcels that are there. And the zoning allows one thing, but I do believe the wetlands of those parcels greatly limits anything that could happen over there, which is a good thing. And then afterwards, I walked down the dirt road, and it's just beautiful over there. I mean, y'all got a slice of heaven, and it's gorgeous. And I want to share with you. I know there might have been some confusion maybe with the original petition, and then it was amended. And you heard Ms. Murray say that her intent was not to shut everything off by this petition, but to limit it to bikes and pedestrians and try to limit the bigger vehicles on the road. And we're following a process here. I hope we followed it correctly, and we can talk about that more at the next meeting. But I want to thank her for bringing it forward because when I became mayor, I was surprised to learn that the city owned 12 bridges. We're not in the bridge business, but we happen to own 12 bridges. And I have made sure that we hired an engineering firm to go out periodically and inspect those bridges. And in fact, one of them, we did an inspection. We're finally getting ready to replace it over on Daniel Island, a city-owned bridge. So this causeway or dam or whatever it really is, we have some responsibility, and thanks for bringing it to our attention because the safety of it is important for all of us. And we'll do that. We're going to drill down and make sure we check on what our responsibilities are, make sure the passageway is safe for everyone. And so out of all this will come a good process and some good discussion, both at committee and back here. So I want to also, like Councilmember Waring, thank you all for coming. It's kind of cool for us, believe it or not, that, you're paying attention to what's going on in your neighborhood. And this is what makes Charleston such a great and special place. So thank you for that, and more to come. But I would say, let's just follow the process. We're going to end up with a good result, I believe, and we're going to make sure that we maintain what we're supposed to and have it safe for everyone. So we do need to take action on the deferral to committee. Any further comments? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all for being with us, but stick around, please, if you like. So the next item up for a public hearing is a review. Wasn't it that much? Thank you all for coming. Okay. Next up is our public hearing to review and discuss draft redistricting maps. And I don't know if we're gonna have another presentation on this. We had a pretty full presentation on it at our workshop meeting. And so I think we'll just go right into, if anybody has a public comment. Did anybody sign up specifically for this? Madam
Yes.
Clerk?
Yes, they did.
And
wait-
Mayor,
wait a
just
second.
before you start, I don't know if Isaac Kramer signed up or not, but,
did.
okay, good, just making sure.
Mohammed Idris.
Evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm here tonight to seek help. One of my daughter died, and she's about to be buried. I'm poor and broke. Individuals have came to me and asked, how could they help? I said, well, I'm going down to my city council, which I've been helping for over 30 years, and seek help from a mayor that I helped put in office and one that is now at the Citadel. And I've worked hard to help these people for years, for years. They have wealth, but I don't have anything. I spend my money to help them get elected. So I'm here tonight asking this city to help me, Mohammed Idris, to find with finance to help me bury my daughter. Thank you.
William Baker.
Yes, William Baker, 1715 Emmons Road, then the city limits over on Johns Island. I'm here to ask the council to vote for option 2 on the council redistricting. Feel very, very strongly about that. We need a councilman that is living, residing, and experiencing everyday life on Johns Island. I was coming across 526 the other day as it exited on Highway 17. And I just punched in my GPS for my home address and it said 2 miles. I was like, what, 2 miles? Oh, 2 miles as the crow flies, but 13 miles to get to my home driving. And I tell you that as an analogy. You know, we're in the city, we're experiencing things on a daily basis, but without a representative in our district, we're miles and miles away when decisions are made. So I urge you to vote for option 2 on the redistricting.
Former Councilmember Wagner.
What's left of me? I've got a little bit slimmer. See, that's all that big money you guys make. Okay. No, about 10 years ago, actually before I ever knew that city council really existed, there was this redistricting done. And from this redistricting, District 5 became Outer West Ashley and Johns Island. Now, I'm the first guy that's ever had Johns Island from the city as such. I replaced a current District 5 man, and he was one of the better council members I think we ever had here. His name was Jimmy Gallant, Reverend Jimmy Gallant. At that time, we had Grand Oaks, West Ashley. We were building up Carolina Bay, and we were heavy on the West Ashley side going south. Since then, about a third of it was Johns Island. The rest of it was West Ashley. Well, 8 years later, I woke up and all of Brownswood Road is pretty well built up. Now, from my 5,000 that I started with, or 4,000. I'm now looking at about 14,000 people in my entire life is running back and forth between Johns Island and West Ashley. We had a meeting, and I believe it was February. It was one of Kevin's first meetings when we were across the way at, it came out, it was part of the 526 discussion as well, which he just talked about. But that there were 22 on pending subdivisions on the books that had not even been started yet. And this has been about 5 to 6 years ago. Okay, so what you guys are looking at.
Time.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway. All right, thank you. Thanks, Pete. Anyway, bottom line is, I agree 100% with this guy. When we ran this last time, we knew this day was coming. And it's here. Okay. But guess what? Now we got 18,000 city residents plus Wadmalaw, Kiowa, Seabrook, and everybody else. This is a 10-mile long island, second biggest island on the East Coast. Guess what? There's only 2 ways on and off. Block one of them. See how much fun that is. Just, keep your phone handy because it's going to be ringing all day. But anyway, bottom line, I think, I've read all 3 of these very, very closely in about 50, 60 times. Johns Island is one of the last frontiers. We're looking forward to the Cainhoy district on your map. And that's a potential district up on the other side of the Cooper. But guess what? The elephant in the room is Johns Island, South Carolina. And whether or not, 526 happens or not, guys, it's really going to be important to the future. I'm so sorry I'm not out there with you. But you know what? Retirement is not a bad thing when you're 70 years old, okay? I will tell you that. And I'm glad I got a chance to see you. I haven't met some of y'all, but hey, keep it up, man. And you'll get your hurricane yet. You are going to run out of luck one day. Sorry. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank
guys.
you, Councilman.
Let me go home and get some supper.
Marcia Higgins.
Good evening, Mayor Tecklenburg, council members. My name is Marcia Higgins. I reside at 970 Main Street, Charleston. I'm here this evening to speak about option 2 of the redistricting plan. Our neighborhood association spent a lot of time reviewing it on Saturday at our meeting. And we are concerned that Maryville and Ashleyville is split. One part is in District 7 and the other part is in District 9. We are requesting that our community, which is of a common interest, is placed in one district, either District 7 or District 9, and that we are not split. We feel that it dilutes our voting strength. We are a community that's being imposed on by the city with gentrification. We are a community that's working very hard to improve ourselves. We do need one voice to speak for us. And that's the reason for our request. We would thank you very much if you would reconsider and redraw the lines. Some people call it gerrymandering. Well, we would like you to look at it and redraw the lines so that our historic community, the town of Maryville, Ashleyville is the side that's closest to the Ashley River. We want to be one community and have one council member. We do appreciate your consideration of this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Yes, ma'am.
Leslie Scarden.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Leslie Scarden. I'm at 1067 Fort Johnson Road. I am the Director of Advocacy for the League of Women Voters and a constituent of District 12. I'm joined again with my colleagues this evening to speak in favor of option 2. It's logical from a compactness, contiguity perspective and keeping communities of interest together, particularly on Johns Island. And we know that there's ample precedent for such district consolidation at both the city, state, and national level. This evening, I'd like to address something that was raised last week, which is around fairness. I assume you all ran because you thought it was the best way to serve your community. I also assume you ran because you assumed it was the best way to serve your democracy and uphold our democracy. As we know, our democracy is fragile, and one of the biggest challenges to our democracy is incumbents picking their voters and not allowing voters to elect their representatives. You have a rare and unique opportunity here to put the people of the city of Charleston ahead of each other and also set an example for the state and other governments. So we urge you to vote in favor of option 2 and put the fairness of the people ahead of fairness to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
Joan Zaleski.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Joan Zaleski, and I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of the Charleston area. And I spoke with council and the mayor last week about urging you to vote for option 2. So I had a whole speech here that I was going to give, and I'm not going to give because I saw that there are 2 bills that are going to have a first reading tonight. Both of them represent what the league is in favor of in terms of option 2. We really don't care whether District 3 or District 6 represents Johns Island. We're really, really happy that Johns Island is going to be a separate district. So we are here tonight to both thank you for the work you've done over the last week since the last workshop. And we're excited that you're going to have the first reading and give fair representation to the people of the city of Charleston. Thank you very much.
Johns Logar. And if everyone could please state their address for the record too. Thank you.
Johns Logar with the Johns Island Task Force, 5528 Frisco Lane. Good to see everyone again. I'll just keep it simple. 3 simple points. One is that Johns Islanders want a single district on Johns Island. The second one is that we're willing to wait until November 2023 for that to occur. It doesn't have to occur tomorrow or in January. We're willing to wait. And the third thing is, from the standpoint of fairness to the current council people, I think it's best that it be number 3, so that all council members have a chance to have their entire 4 years of service. So we encourage you to listen to Johns Islanders and vote for a single district. Thank you very much.
Edith Hama.
Good evening. I'm Edith Hammond. I live at Nature View Circle on Johns Island. And this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Representation, or taxation rather, without representation, sometimes I thought was rather applicable to Johns Island. And I'm really happy that we are finally going to get our own representative. We have given it a lot of thought, 3 versus 1. However, we really would like to have a representative that actually lives on Johns Island and experiences lives rather than somebody who is further away and doesn't go through what we go through on a daily basis. So I do understand 1 is a lonely number, but it only is if the rest of you do not wish to listen to that number and just walk over it. You could have done the same thing with 3. Really, we need 7, and I don't think we'll ever get that.
Patricia Fair.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Patricia Fair. I'm at 3956 Gift Boulevard on Johns Island. As a research scientist, I bring the best available methods when addressing a specific problem. Likewise, you all have that same opportunity to bring the best methods for representation for Johns Island, and to do that now. From the standpoint, we know the advantages of single member representation. The constituents know the representative and vice versa. We have geographic location and we have accountabilities, which we have not ever had. So I urge you all to use the best methods here and vote for a single representative.
Shane Howe.
Hi, my name is Shayna Howell. I live at 294 Little Oak Island. That's Folly Beach. I am not a constituent. I am here, spent the past couple of years, really more than 2 years, researching and advocating for fair maps with the League of Women Voters of South Carolina as the co-chair of their redistricting work group. I'm going to get 2 minutes down into one really quickly and just basically address the concern of fairness that some of the council members had last week, while incumbent protection is allowed as a redistricting criteria in South Carolina, the National Conference of State Legislatures notes that in the past 2 decades, a new criteria has emerged in many states, a prohibition on favoring or disfavoring an incumbent candidate or party. I hope this tenet of good government continues to spread across state and local governments, and I see the city of Charleston has a wonderful opportunity to be a leader in this area. While I see us necessary from a good government perspective, I know it's not an easy choice to make though, and I want to put forward one possibility. It may make sense to number the Peninsula District number 3 so that it will be up for election with odd number districts in 2023, and the current District 3 and District 6 incumbents would both have a chance to run and voters could make a choice at that time. Then the Johns Island District would be assigned 6 and would have a special election at the same time. I'm sure your attorneys can give you good advice on that, but the plan unites communities of interest on the peninsula and Johns Island and across the city. So thank you so much for bringing it forward and considering it.
Vicki Westing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity for us to speak on this subject. I'm Vicki Westberg, also co-president for the Charleston Area League of Women Voters. And we are thrilled that Council is being so transparent about this entire process. It's been encouraging to be a part of being listened to and having our perspectives appreciated. We're urging the adoption of option 2. It looks like, just reading the agenda tonight, that there's been some changing about of the names, but option 2 is the one we're looking for. And we appreciate that because it does not focus on incumbent protection. And just an aside, the League is a nonpartisan organization, but that does not mean we're not political. And we observe, study, and advocate for good governance principles, and we consider this to be one of our highest priorities. Our goal in redistricting is to ensure that those good governance principles prevail. And we are thankful that you are considering the options that allow voters to choose their representatives and not the other way around. Thank you.
Peter Rubino.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Rubino. I live at 3009 Tugelo Street on Johns Island, also in the city of Charleston. I'm representing my own feelings, but also I represent the Johns Island Council. We are in support of option 2. It's time that we on Johns Island have a seat at the table. We want a representative who lives on the island so that they know the issues, needs, and desires of residents, understands the traffic, transportation, and safety issues, as well as the flooding and water issues, like access to water for activities. We want smart planned growth, but also to keep our rural way of life. Continuation of family farming and conservation efforts are a must. This is why we'd like to see the city and county pass ordinances to make the urban growth boundary a fixed line on the maps. We understand that one councilman from Johns Island will require more effort to support local needs at the council. But if we're doing the right things, the decisions, that should be easy for everyone to agree on. Thank you for your time.
Isaac Kramer.
Good evening. I'm Isaac Kramer, the Director of Elections here in Charleston County. I've spoken with you all before. Thankful to be here in the midst of election season. I just want to thank the mayor and council. If you remember, in 2020, we got parking at the Gilliard Center for our voters, which created free parking. And that is thanks to you and the work that you all do. And we're working again for this upcoming election because we'll have early voting starting. This is my plug for everybody. Early voting starts October 24th downtown at the main library and other city of Charleston areas too. West Ashley Seacoast Church. Anyway, I'm very thankful for this opportunity because my ears perk up when we talk about elections for many reasons. One is redistricting. And I'm happy to answer questions when we get to this part of council tonight, because it's more than just saying we're going to have an election on X date, because that's what I care about. Right now, my staff is preparing for November and all gears are in full mode. We're going. Anything that touches redistricting, we cannot do anything to any voters' records during this process. It is important that we know that. So if you vote to have an election in early January, there is no way we can do that in an effective way with touching every voter's record, sending them a notice, getting people even knowing that there's an election happening in January. Councilman Gregg knows that. It's hard to tell people you have a special election in January when you have the holidays going on. My staff is working very hard right now to ensure we have a successful November election, but elections don't stop on November 8th. We have to shut everything down from that election. We have certification. We have a protest period. Then we have a town of Kiowa election in December. There's a lot of moving parts for us in election administration. A lot of people don't think about that. They think about, oh, if we just set an election date, it happens. Special elections are hard because we're in schools. We need poll workers. We need locations. And most importantly, we need voters to show up and vote, right? Our goal is to make sure that we have free and fair elections. We have accessible elections. Having an election probably before your November election, which will be a citywide election, people will be talking about it, would be the preferred method. So I'm happy to answer more questions on that. I'm thankful to come tonight. We're in the middle of election planning and preparation, but I thought it was very important to be here tonight so you could hear from me directly and know that we are working hard and we want to have a successful election coming up. It is not just one day. It took us almost 4 months to get redistricting done this year for all of Charleston County. And I just want to let you know, in Beaufort County, there was an issue because of redistricting where a candidate who filed for office wasn't, their ballot when they pulled up wasn't the right one. We don't want that kind of issue. So if we're rushed and we're moving very fast, it's going to create a headache for us in other means. So that's all I have to say. If you need any other questions, I will be here for the duration of council tonight. Thank you.
And then we did receive one comment online. Anthony Bryant submitted 3 comments discussing the South Carolina Senate redistricting maps for Senate and congressional districts. Judge Dawson, issues with the BAR and BZA not considering financial hardships and gentrification. And those are all the comments we received.
Did we miss anybody? Does anybody want to be heard on this redistricting matter that wasn't called out? All right, seeing no one. Well, the matter can come to council. It's actually on our agenda under first readings, items M, 2, and 3. If it's the pleasure of council, we would, to take it up right now, we would need to amend the agenda to do that, correct?
You would need to suspend.
We need to suspend the rules and amend the agenda. If that's the pleasure of council, we can come back to it when we get the first readings if you like.
And it, just for clarification, it is not an amendment. It's just to move it out of order on the agenda.
Right. All right, and we have a second to bring it up on the agenda. Second. Any discussion? All in favor of doing that, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. So we now have items M2 and 3 for consideration. Would anybody like to make a motion?
What?
Yeah, what are we voting on?
Councilmember Waring?
I guess, what are we voting on like everybody else is?
Well, we have two items available to make a motion on, and that's item M2 is the first one up. I think these are both option 2 maps. The first one of which that, you know, there were two options. One would move one district to Johns Island, and the other would move, one would move option District 3 to Johns Island. I think that's number 2, correct?
Correct, option. So these are the iterations of option 2. 1A is moving 3 to Johns Island. 1B is moving 6 to Johns Island.
So this is kind of in keeping with what I thought was a consensus at our workshop, that we would basically decide the issue of whether we were going to move a whole district to Johns Island or not. And these were the two options that allowed that to happen. And so we put them both on the agenda for your consideration. Councilmember Gregg and then Saccharin. You're good? Councilmember Saccharin?
Thank you, Mayor. Are we going to take both of these at once, or one? Are we going to do 2 first and then 3? Okay. Can y'all hear me, or is my mic working?
Your mic is working, yes, sir.
Can I have some additional time for a comment?
Sir?
Additional time for comment? Can I
Yes, sir.
So obviously both 2 and 3 are going to affect the District 3 in serious ways. And I just wanted to, before we get into debate and have a discussion, I think it's going to be easier for me to just make my comments. I think it'll help folks make an informed decision. So first, I'd like to acknowledge Tracy and the hard work from the city staff on the process. It's been completely transparent on my end. And Tracy's been available every time. I'm not sure if she's here, but she's been available every time I've had a call or question. And I know the process hasn't been easy, in particular with some of the competing interests we've had and opinions around this table. For me, and I've shared this with the mayor and other council members, I can't deny the data that exists and the population shifts that have occurred over the past 10 years. Significant growth in West Ashley, Johns Island, and Daniel Island. And folks in those areas deserve equitable representation. And as someone who's co-chaired our Special Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation, and who's currently co-chairing our Permanent Commission on Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation, my use of the word equitable is intentional. Equity, in my opinion, isn't just about race or gender. It's about representation and the democratic process. And I'd be a hypocrite if I ignored the fact that all City Charleston residents deserve equitable representation. And that includes areas in West Ashley, Daniel Island, and in this case, particularly Johns Island. I think there's a growing consensus on council that our priority to protect current council members is not ideal, and nor does it, in my opinion, align with the spirit of good governance. I support the version which moves District 3 to Johns Island, which essentially creates a situation where I no longer have a district to call home. Doing so will eliminate my ability to run for re-election in November 23. But I feel very strongly about this. The taxpayers in Johns Island deserve equitable and proportionate representation, and that is more important to me. I support keeping District 6 on the peninsula and allowing my colleague, Councilmember Gregory, to fulfill his 2 years left on his term. I don't have any ill feelings. I believe this is the best course of action given the data and the population shifts. But I also want to acknowledge, I had a conversation with Dale a little bit before the meeting. I realized there was jockeying behind the scenes about what folks wanted to work, where they didn't want to serve. And I just want to say I'm proud that I didn't do that. So, and I said several council meetings ago, the will of council is the will of council. This is just a seat. Obviously, while I'm in this seat, I want to do the best job I can, but I was elected and there's a new person that's going to come in District 3. Having said all this, I do want to say that I would like to provide an opinion on Johns Island, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. And this is just an opinion, having served here for 2.5 years and understanding the dynamic that works on council. I actually think the sweet spot is 2. So I'm trying to build consensus from a legislative standpoint, remove an item on the agenda that is Johns Island specific. It's tremendously helpful to have someone that shares those interests. And I get what folks are saying about have a single member districts, but be careful what you ask for. Councilman Waring says it best. 1 is a lonely number. I'm just giving you advice. I understand the request, but my opinion, 2 is a sweet spot. And for the record, and this is something that I think gets missed, as it currently stands, nobody living on Johns Island has been precluded from running for a city council seat. Nobody. It just so happens that Councilman Brady doesn't live on Johns Island, but nobody has been precluded from representing Johns Island. I realize folks want to actually have folks that live on the island who wake up every day thinking about the challenges and opportunities, but I think it could best be done by 2 members, not just 1. And lastly, I would encourage my fellow council members not to delay this tough decision, which clearly we're not, regarding districting or any other longer. And let's take a vote tonight and move on to more important issues and challenges that we have as a city. So thank you.
Well, is that a motion, sir? Is that in the form of a motion to accept item number M2?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion?
No.
Councilmember Seekings, then Waring, then Mitchell.
I don't know, Brian, first, but anyway, first off, Councilmember Saccharin, it can't be easy what you just did. I mean, all of us sitting around this table take a point of pride in representing our constituents and being a part of the city. It's the greatest honor I've ever had in my life. And to voluntarily step up and give that seat up, you're a better man than me. And I just got to say, really admire you for doing that. Really do. I think all of us do. That being said, and if we're heading to a single member district on Johns Island, number 3, on which it looks like we are, I've got a couple questions that I would like to ask first, Mr. Kramer. To the extent that we're going to give first reading tonight to a version of a map that puts a district on Johns Island and leaves Councilmember Saccharin without a district, it is going to be finalized in October of 2022. If we give it first reading tonight and second and third reading at our next meeting. All right about that? You've come here tonight and told us elections are hard. We get that. Running elections are hard. I understand that. Is what you're telling us, if we adopt this map tonight, that we should wait for a year and a month to have a special election? Or is there a time between now and a year and a month from now that you're going to be able to put up enough people to have a special election on Johns Island? Because not only is this going to affect Johns Island and its district that we're going to create, it affects everybody around here, particularly those odd member districts who they're going to be up for election in November, and they're not going to get to settle into their new district maybe until, I don't know, whatever date we say this map's going to be effective, maybe the day before election day. So, you know, my preference would be, if we're going to do this, to put the map effect as quickly as possible, because I think it's the right thing to do. And we've always done that. But if we're going to wait a year and a month, is that what you're suggesting to us?
Well, I'd like 2 responses. Julia, if you don't mind coming forward as well, and then Isaac, I'd be interested to hear your response. In all due caution, I do believe legal counsel is going to advise us to have one more public hearing. And so to give proper notice on that, it may be in fact the first meeting in November for us to give second and third readings, which will still be a year, but not a year and a month. But can I just confirm that first with Julia, that that's our feeling from legal counsel?
That is correct. We're going to have another public hearing. We have to have 2 weeks notice. So it would probably be first meeting in November where we'd have public hearing and second and third reading. Is that right, Jennifer? I think so.
That sounds right. Yes.
Yes.
Right. And if you would allow me, council member, to let the gentleman from the County Election Commission respond specifically to the availability or the possibility of doing that. But I would like to remind council, I think the comment was made by Councilmember Waring at our last meeting, that everybody in the city is represented right now. There's no lapse in representation. Everybody's got a council member, even if we wait a year. Isaac?
Yes. So as you all know, City of Charleston is our biggest municipality in Charleston County. It's about 120,000 voters. You're going to affect 40%, I believe, looking at the maps of redistricting. There's gonna be a lot of confusion about who's in what district. I can tell you from my experience with redistricting, it's not a 1 month process. There's so much back and forth with GIS. We'll be talking with Tracy pretty much daily, making sure we have every single person. I mean, what was different about redistricting this past year was congressional. The lines fell on precinct boundaries. We don't have that same luxury here. And we got to make sure every single voter is in the correct district. So when they go vote, there's not an issue. And there's going to be confusion. So I heard one of the public comments about splitting neighborhoods. It's going to be a big deal for this. And we want to make sure we're notifying folks. And that took us a 4 month process of this year. And I'm thinking it's going to be similar because we just have so many more there's minutia there. And then we have City of North Charleston also going through the same thing with redistricting. They haven't even gone through this process yet. And there are other municipalities in South Carolina that are extending the special elections that would be happening to the normal municipal election. It is my opinion that special elections outside of the normal scheduled elections, actually you have a decrease in voter turnout. Less people know that there's an election, and it's something that all counties in South Carolina this year will be pushing for with our state legislature, that we have actual either quarterly elections or elections that everyone knows it falls on this Tuesday. So whether that's November or July, that's up to council. I'm just saying, I've heard conversations because I've been paying attention. I've been watching these council meetings because every time we talk about elections, my ears perk up. And if January, February, March, I think that's very soon. And I want to make sure our staff is able to do, and it's not just me, it's Berkeley County too. So Berkeley County has less staff, has less resources, but they're also impacted because now they'll have 2 council districts on Daniel Island, not just one, they'll have 2. So that affects a lot of people. It's not just a small portion, but I'm here. I'm going to tell you just from an election administration standpoint.
So could I ask you, just give us a real brief outline of what's the process going from here when we approve a map for you to conduct an election?
Well, the first thing will be to redistrict those voters. So we have to look at we have to look at the map. We have to look at the overlay. I have someone in our GIS and our staff who will look and map that with everything. Then we will do a comparison. There will be errors. There always are. That's how it is. There's always errors. And then we have to go back and correct those. But we're not touching voters' records in the middle of an election. And even post-election, which will be in November, people are going to go online. They're going to say they're going to be confused. And then they're going to say, we're doing something behind the scenes. We're not doing that. And then after that, we're going to have to then notify those voters affected. I know that you all want that. We did that. If you remember, we sent out a postcard to all Charleston County voters. You may have gotten one. That takes work. That takes prepping. That takes proofing. And then we will get hundreds of phone calls about that postcard. Our office will. And they'll say, we're angry. We're mad. We'll say, we're just notifying you about the changes. That's all we're doing. And we got that during this year. And we're just here to do our job. We want to make sure people are informed about where they are. Then we have to notify all the polling locations, recruit all the poll workers for that special election. And yes, Johns Island, it's going to be a significant district. So you're talking, 14,000 folks that'll be eligible to vote. And then we'll be having to have an election, and we'll make sure that and then we have early voting, absentee voting opens up. So it's a long process. It's not just tomorrow we have an election.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Just quick follow-up. Thank
Yeah.
you. And
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to let you know, I didn't call you, but I'm one of those people who got that card, and I'm not so happy with it either, by the way. So I think that I'm glad that the city is doing what it's doing, because I do think we're actually listening to the voters and giving them what they want. Because when we went through redistricting on a couple of other levels, I never heard from anybody until I got your card. And it was a done deal. So thank you.
Okay, I forgot who was next.
It was-
Councilmember Mitchell, you want to go next?
Oops. No, I know this is a rough situation with me going through the night, but I have to applaud Councilman Sackler. This is something that I did back in 2000. Same thing you're doing tonight, I have done it. And I stayed off of council when I got off because my district was merged with another district. And I bowed out because the way I am, I said, I'm not going to run against another colleague. I'm not going to run against another. During that time, it was another African-American. And the way I grew up, I wasn't going to do it. So I stepped aside. Although I didn't run, I still got 100 and something votes. But I stayed home and sat on my porch and watched them up and down the street. And I've been saying to him, I came back in 2006 when they called me to come back on council. And that's when I came back in 2006 to the present day. So it takes some gumption to do that. It hurts. But when you're doing what you feel is right, that's the key to everything. Doing what you know you feel that is correct and right. And that's what I think he's doing today. He felt it. He knows that his colleague just ran and was elected. He knows that the seat that he is sitting in, well, it's not our seat anyway, but the seat that he's sitting in representing the people in District 3, he knows that that particular district is going to be up next year. So I think he thought about it. And he made this decision. And I applaud him for making that decision he made. Because he's doing a marvelous job, but he made that decision. And I have to applaud him for that. And I did it. So I know where he's coming from because I did it myself. That's why I said on council, there's no one else on council here. One council went through what I went through since I've been here. I've been here a good while. And even other council members did the same thing. Councilman Lewis and Jimmy Gallant. Jimmy Gallant did the same thing. He stepped out, stayed out. And that's how Councilman Lewis stayed on council. So we're doing the same thing. It's the same reaction going over and over again. Same thing happened. But somebody got to have that fortitude in themselves that say, hey, I'm doing what the master wanted me to do and looking at me as an individual and what is the right thing to do. And that's what I think he's doing. And I'm not going to say it's hurting. It's a hurting thing. It's a hurting feeling. But good things are going to come to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Councilmember Mitchell and Councilmember Sackler. The integrity that you just saw displayed by both of these gentlemen, and in particular, Councilmember Sackler, is the type quality of leadership we have around this council table. One of the things I like to speak to is, and I did say the thing about one being the loneliest number, but I can tell you one of the things, with all due respect, Ms. Higgins, the Asheville, Maryville area has enjoyed the privilege of having 3 council members represent them. And when those issues came forward, the integrity of Councilmember Sackler, Councilmember Shaheed, and myself came to this council 25% to get when streets needed to be paved, the greenway needed to be improved, police protection needed to be increased, Higgins Pier appropriations, the Carl Richardson Park that we all now so proud of. I can remember meeting in the overgrown area with Councilmember Sackler, Councilmember Shaheed, Senator Kempson, Mr. Kronsberg, and the day, I would say in another month or so, we're going to cut the ribbon on something that's going to preserve history for all to see, right across from the birthplace of South Carolina. Doing that as one person, I wouldn't say it couldn't have been done, But I can just tell you, it's a lot easier when you got people of integrity working around the table on your behalf. So that, after Councilmember Saccharin got sworn in, and you may remember this, Councilmember, we had a little reception in Washington Park next door. And I saw his father, and I came up to congratulate them. And I got to, obviously Councilmember Saccharin was very happy, but he wasn't happier than his father. Okay. And that's an experience I had shared with my father when I got elected. And certainly he had actually served on council. And it's something that you carry on for a lifetime, that experience, the joy that he had with his father embracing him just for the privilege to serve. And that's not selfish. That's the epitome of integrity. So I definitely want to thank you. There's a kinship or brotherhood or sisterhood when you serve in these bodies on behalf of others that you carry with you for a lifetime, whether you're in office or not. So frankly, you made it easier for your friends. Thank you, Councilmember Saccharin.
Councilmember Shade, and then Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My Mediterranean brother, you've made us all very proud tonight. And I can't tell you, your integrity and your dignity speaks volumes. And it's up there with the highest regard for all of us, which you just said tonight. When the mayor and I got elected in 2015, he was the brand new mayor, and I was a lonely brand new city council member, and everybody else had been reelected. I was the new kid on the block. In 4 years, there's 7 new faces on here, which means that the democratic process works very well. Voters speak, and new faces come along. And we've seen that with some new faces on this council. I proposed a new map to look at other alternatives. Because Johns Island, y'all have been grossly underrepresented for the past 10 years or so. And when you look at the Planning Commission's numbers, the growth on Johns Island, and Marvin Wagner said it very well, is the last frontier, and the growth is going to continue in that direction. And what's not lost on me is that whatever we do in voting for this redistricting, we're stuck with it for 10 years. And I want you to think about that for a few seconds. Whatever we do here, we're stuck with it for 10 years. And what's going to happen is, if you look at the numbers, you could be underrepresented again within that time frame. And that, for me, is a huge problem on deciding to just give you one representative on Johns Island. Because as Councilmember Waring has said repeatedly, and as other council members have mentioned, you do need to have a coalition. This little part of Charleston called Maryville, Ashleyville, is one of the most historically significant areas in our city. For a lot of reasons, it's one of the most important historical significant areas in our city. And the three of us have worked together and we've collaborated to ensure the integrity of that neighborhood. It's so important to us to what needs to go over there. You, in spite of what Higgins said, you don't need one representative over Maryville, Asheville. You need 3, probably need 4, quite honestly, because there's a continuing fight of all the issues that are taking place in this very tiny little village of West Asheville, the city, because of all of its historical significance and its ongoing heritage that exists over there. When we had our workshop last week, it was the very first time, and I've been complaining about this, it was the very first time I got to hear from them and from the League of Women Voters. And I can't tell you how important that was for me to hear from y'all, because we were operating previously in the vacuum, which was unfair to us because we were making decisions based on what we perceived. But it was grossly unfair to you guys because we couldn't hear from you as to what y'all thoughts were and your processes. The state of South Carolina is very fortunate for a lot of reasons. But this process, there's Isaac, the process that we have in elections in South Carolina is different than other states. The process is worked on a nonpartisan basis. And the League of Women Voters is very instrumental in making sure that happens, but your office, Isaac, is nonpartisan. And we've seen throughout the country this huge trend to make elections partisan. And nothing could be more worse or more challenging to our democracy of threatening free elections if it's in a way that's nonpartisan. We're also very lucky in the city of Charleston that we have single member districts. If you look at our brothers and sisters across the river on Goose Creek, Mount Pleasant, and other areas, they don't have single member districts. And it is one group, one area, one geographic area dictates the rest of the city. So it is critically important, I think, that we take stock of that. There's probably another plan I think that works a little bit better. I don't think it's not on our table right now. My vote, whatever I decided how to vote tonight, I want you to hear me very loud and clear. I'm not opposed to Johns Island having a resident live on Johns Island. What I'm looking for is to make sure that Johns Island has more than adequate representation. And I really do believe there's a process we can go through to make sure that there are at least 2 city council members who represent all or a portion of Johns Island. To me, that's most critical. But this process that we're going through, I think we're all here conscientious of that. I thank y'all for being here and letting us listen to y'all and to the League of Women Voters for their input on this. Hearing from y'all with me is vitally critical. I understand now we're going to have another public hearing on this and maybe in November. And we'll see where this leads us on that. But I thank y'all for y'all's attention and to Councilmember Sackton for your comments earlier tonight. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Councilmember Brady, and then Shealy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize. I'm battling a little bit of a cold tonight. But I want to thank League of Women Voters and the folks from Johns Island for coming out tonight. One of the things when I first got elected and I started meeting with folks on Johns Island, and it was a common refrain was, we appreciate what you're doing, but we'd really like to have our own person. And the point is well received that someone could have run had they wanted, but the previous mathematical demographics would have made that unlikely anyway because the district was tilted towards outer West Ashley anyway. So I say all that to say, I want to ask my colleagues to support a single member district for Johns Island. It's something I've heard throughout my 2.5 years on council as we've gone through and talked about it, that they want a neighbor to represent them. They want someone that, goes to the grocery store that they see, that gets stuck on Main Road, that gets stuck on Maybank. They want somebody there that experiences those struggles, experiences some of the, flood issues that happen that are unique to Johns Island, the watershed issues that are unique to Johns Island. And this gives them that opportunity for someone to have the opportunity to step up and run. And I think, I ran against former council member Wagner, but I do think that he pointed out accurately that, this day was coming. We knew it. I mean, this day was coming where we were going to have to make some hard decisions. And I came prepared tonight to take the gloves off and fight if we needed to and see where the smoke settled in the end. But when I was running almost now 3 years ago, I was seeing Councilmember Rappel and Councilmember Sacchin more than I was seeing my wife at some points during the campaign process. I think we've all kind of been there, and it's always been a kind of tight knit group between Councilmember Rappel and Councilmember Sacchin and myself because of that. And when Councilmember Sacchin went to his runoff, I supported him in that. And it was, the actions tonight, I think, Councilmember, that you demonstrated, I was proud to support you then. I'm even more proud to support you now. And I think you showed why I had faith in you and why the voters had faith in you as well. And, I commend you for that. I don't know, I agree with Councilmember Seekings. It would take a lot of soul searching for us around the table to be able to do that as well. But, I think it's a testament to your character and your integrity, and also just the willingness that, through the time of your service coming to an end in November, that you're opening up the opportunity for another section of the city to be able to elect someone of their choice. And, I commend you for thinking that way, and for doing that. And I want to ask my colleagues to support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to say how honorable and, that is. I know it's tough. It has to be tough. I can't imagine being in that situation. So thank you, Councilman Saccharin, for that. I also just want to say to the people of Johns Island that I know that Councilman Brady and Councilman Wagner had your best interest in mind the whole time they served you. I know that from discussions that we've had, and I know that in the way that they fought for you right here on this floor. So you did have representation. I will say, I know that Councilman Brady said it may have been swayed a little bit West Ashley in the last election, but I believe that if Johns Island would have had a representative who would have stepped up and run for that seat, you had just as good an opportunity as either one of the candidates that was there. And I think you would have had a good chance. Councilman Brady came out on top. He was the stronger one. But I believe that if Johns Island would have had a representative with the concerns that Johns Island has, I believe you could have won that race or had at least as good an opportunity as Councilman Brady did. When I look at this option 2, obviously that's what the people of Johns Island want. But as I've looked at it, I've tried to look at what's best for my constituents and what's best for West Ashley. Option 2 to me is clearly the best choice because it tightens up those districts. It kind of does what the Johns Island people are asking for Johns Island. It puts our representatives more in the middle of the districts when you look at those maps. So I'm gonna vote for option 2 on here because it's what Johns Island wants, but I feel like it's what's best for West Ashley as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Gregg, and then Bowden.
Jason, thank you. Again, I know I'm repeating that, but I feel like I owe you a debt of gratitude for keeping us having to duke this out tonight. That was a magnanimous gesture and took a lot of courage. I'd like to say I'd be able to do the same thing, but you certainly set a great example for all of us around this table when that time may come, which isn't that far away. So it's 2022 right now. Mr. Kramer, the way I understand this, we are at best looking at sometime late 2023 when this new election might take place. So I came here tonight with the intention of saying that if we're going to do this, let's move forward with it now. I understand there are logistical issues with voter registration, but having just been through a special election, and I will also be up for re-election in a year and a month, I would like to get a better understanding of the time frame. I think it's fair to our constituents that we're representing that they know who their council member will be going forward. So whether we make the maps effective the day before the election or the month before the election, I think we need to move forward with it quickly, where by the time the new council members are sworn in, it will be 2024. And we're only 6 years away then from another census. So I guess the last thing I would say is that I hope in the future we figure out a way to do this more efficiently and hopefully maybe coincide a little bit better with a more near-term election. So Mr. Kramer, that being said, what is the earliest that, my understanding, the way you explained it, is you would recommend us wait until November 2023. That logistically makes sense, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is I want to, so I have the opportunity from hearing from voters every day. It's something that we do. I know that this body here has had a lot of special elections. And I can tell you that having a special election for Johns Island or whatever, I don't care what, honestly, I don't care what map you all pass. I really don't. It doesn't, we're going to get the job done. We will do it. But what I do care about is the fact that 10% voter turnout, nobody knows that there's an election going on, and you do it in January or you do it in April. That's not a normally scheduled election for City of Charleston. Next year, and this is just Isaac Kramer speaking, I live in the City of Charleston too. I live in West Ashley. Councilman Shealy is my representative, my councilman, sorry. My wife went to school with, or actually Ashland was, anyway, I'm digressing. Trying to, but my point in all this is selfishly as a voter, and I know this because I'm talking with colleagues across the country who are in election administration, the facts are there. Voter turnout is extremely low in special elections. We had 12% turnout in the District 1 in January. You're going to look at 25% turnout in November 2023. I'm just saying that I think as a voter, as a councilman or councilwoman, you would want to have the most people participating in that election.
Okay.
It is something that people have said across the aisle. The more, and this happens in South Carolina, we have an election every Tuesday in South Carolina, and that creates voter fatigue. And I'm going to guarantee you, I'm just predicting next year we may have somebody here who moves away to Hawaii and retires in the sunsets, and I'm going to leave council. We're going to have a special election within 13 weeks. So that could happen. We could have another election just around the corner from a scheduled election in April or May. So with all those things considered, we can make the decision. I say we because I'm on your team. We can make the decision to have the election in November of 2023. It's going to have the most voter turnout. You already have the election scheduled on the calendar. This is not something that's new to this city. It's happening all across the South Carolina right now with redistricting. I personally believe to have the most voter turnout, to have the best possible election with advance notice, because everyone's going to be talking about it. You're going to have the better participation for next November.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, one other.
Yes,
So
sir.
I guess the last point I would make is let's please move forward with the maps as they're drawn now. No more fiddling with adding another person on Johns Island. The way the maps are drawn now, we should move forward with them in their current state. Option 1A or 2 or whatever we're calling it. And I say that speaking as someone who currently represents the Cainhoy Peninsula, Ansonboro, Gadsdenboro, and the French Quarter, which so I certainly understand the challenges associated with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's sort of incredible to me that people don't have faith in our elections in this country after hearing somebody like Mr. Kramer speak, and the league for participating, and Councilmember Saccharin for making a selfless decision about what was best for his constituents. And I'll keep his ego in check and not praise him any further than that. But we talked about 10 years ago, people saw that this day was coming. I'd like to think about what's going to happen in 10 years from now. And I'm not proposing changing the maps. I foresee a lot of the problems that we're dealing with now getting worse. And there's a lot of ways we can solve that. I don't want to get Councilmember Appel started on those sorts of things, but I already see him making notes. I'm worried about what might come next. But in all seriousness, in Councilmember Shade mentioned it, God knows how many times we've talked about this ago. I think we need more people. I think we need more council members. A day is coming when we cannot effectively represent the number of people that we are going to be asked to represent. And I just sort of want to put the marker down. That's a conversation we have absolutely got to have in the future. But I firmly agree with sort of what everybody else said. I actually came here intending to vote for something different than what Councilmember Saccharin has asked for. So, careful what you wish for kind of thing. But I totally agree that we've talked about this enough. This is by far the most I think I have weighed in on it. But I think we've got to move forward with this. I think we have something that is constitutional, that plenty of people have weighed in on, that does justice to our citizens, and we need to move forward with this. But we also need to start looking to the future, and have a plan for the day that's coming, and it'll probably come much sooner than 10 years from now.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I was not surprised at all with Councilmember Saccharin's decision. Councilman Saccharin and I have spent countless hours together over the years on equity, inclusion, and all kinds of discussions in that regard and others. So I was not surprised. And it was selfless, because this body was about to get pretty divisive on this issue. I too heard the rumblings. And as you opted not to participate, because we had our conversation weeks ago on this issue. So I was not surprised at all. I think that it's very important that Councilman Saccharin and I have the necessary transition for District 3. He has a lot of work to do before November of 23. We have a lot of work to do together in our existing districts before you leave. The transition is going to be very, very important. So I can clear the air. I will complete my term. I will complete my term. Just so that we're clear, there will be no surprises at all, as I committed to Councilman Saccharin in our discussion. So again, none of this is surprising, given the caliber of a person that Councilman Saccharin is, the man Councilman Saccharin is, the sacrifice that Councilman Saccharin is just about to make. And as we say, Councilman Saccharin, for the greater good, because it's bigger than both of us. And we've always been committed. I appreciate you. Peace.
Thank you, council member. So we have on the floor a motion to approve from first readings M2, which is known as option 2, alternate 1A. The net effect would be to move District 3 to Johns Island and create a single district on Johns Island. I do want to make a comment before we vote about the timing. But before I do that, many beautiful things have been said. I just want to echo those. Jason, I believe you've shown a beautiful example of selflessness, and I respect you to the hilt as a public servant and as a gentleman. And thank you for your service to the city of Charleston during your term here, but by your selfless motion here tonight. Now, regarding the timing, I do think from a logistical point of view, it's probably easier to include it when we have the regular election. I certainly believe you'll have a higher turnout. It'll be a citywide election next year, but from a equity perspective, you know, one of the main reasons that Jason gave us tonight for his motion was that Councilmember Gregory should be allowed to serve out his 4-year term that he just got elected to whenever it was last general election. Isn't it fair that Councilmember Saccharin be allowed to serve out his 4-year term? And that would be till next November. And so I think from a sense of fairness, I know we like to move forward, but I would respectfully ask us to approve the motion as is, which I believe would make it effective for an election next November. Isn't that correct, Ms. Copeland? That's correct. Councilmember Saccharin.
I do have one more clarifying question. Obviously, I'm supporting number 2, but if I'm supporting number 2, and does that also include supporting the single member district for Johns Island, meaning that there's going to be one representative? I thought we were going to have a discussion on
The map would, the approval of this motion would approve the map that showed a single district on Johns Island.
with one single representative.
That's correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Shea.
I have a question for Julia.
Yes.
No.
I don't use my line of sight. I can't help it. So just to be clear, what you and the mayor said earlier, we're going to have another public hearing. What would be the purpose of the public hearing?
The purpose of the public hearing is presently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jennifer, the 3 maps that are that were listed or posted for the public hearing tonight do not actually show this option that you are adopting. The 3rd option showed both. So in the interest of fairness and transparency, we thought it would be best to show the map that we just had first reading on for public hearing in the November meeting.
Well, I got your attention. So if any of us vote no for M2,
M2.
it's M3 on our agenda, which is option 2.
Mhm.
If we vote no for that, then don't we have, as a no vote, the opportunity to come back, change our mind? In other words, I know we want to get this thing done,
Mhm.
but as I said earlier, this is something that's going to be staying with us for the next 10 years. I just want to look at one other, if at all possible, alternative, if there one exists, to ensure Johns Island has more than one vote on there. So I just want to make sure that if you vote no, that gives you the option of coming back and making an amendment. Is that correct?
I think you have to be on the prevailing side in order to.
Well, he's talking about a motion. Well, that's for a
reconsider.
motion for reconsideration.
I think
but-
you have to be on the prevailing side. So if you vote no and the ayes, if it passes and you voted no, I don't think you can bring it back.
Right.
So in order to, if I want to make a proposal to a change, I have to vote yes.
So are you suggesting in between first and second reading, you'd make an
Yes,
amendment?
yes. I had to be on the prevailing side to make a change if I want to make a change.
If you want to make an amendment after first reading, I don't think it matters whether or not you're on a yes or no
I
side.
think you can make an amendment regardless.
Correct.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
But that would push the public hearing. If you vote tonight and we have a first reading, and then we go and try to change it between second and third, that's going to push the public hearing further back,
Got it.
just so you know.
And so the public hearing requires 2 weeks notice. So that's why we would have to wait until November.
Councilmember Gregg.
Respectfully, Councilman Saccharin, Councilman Shade, the population of Johns Island doesn't necessitate 2 council members. And I say that having been the lone council member, District 1, the Cainhoy Peninsula has had at times a partial council member and now a full council member. We never split the Cainhoy Peninsula or Daniel Island so that we'd have multiple council members representing that area. This council never decided to do that. There's no reason and there's no precedent for doing that on Johns Island. It should be a single member district, the way the maps are currently drawn. And I think this council has spoken that in precedence as it pertained to Daniel Island and its growth. Thank you.
All right. Any further comment? Councilmember Pell, I hadn't heard from you
I
yet.
just gotta, all right, everyone roll your eyes. I'm sorry, y'all are gonna have to listen to me, okay? Roll your eyes. I just
Remember,
wanna
there's
note for
a
the record-
10-minute limit.
I just want to note for the record, Jason, that was a very class act thing that you did, and it's very indicative. It's not a one-off manifestation. This is who you've been since I've known you, and since you've been on this council. You've always been straight up, and you've always been honest, and you're a man of integrity. And I just want that to reflect the record. But this census process that we've just gone through, and the demographic trends that are laid before us tell a very sad story. It's a sad story of failure over the past several decades of out of control suburban sprawl, while you have a hollowed out peninsula and a hollowed out urban area of not just population generally, but African-American population specifically. And that's at the core of a lot of the problems that we're dealing with. Before World War II, Charleston almost had 100,000 people on the peninsula. Now it's around 30-something thousand. I hope that in 2030, when the census is conducted again, that we have a substantially larger population on the peninsula, more African Americans on the peninsula, more regular people on the peninsula. We should have 100,000 people on the peninsula easily. It is a crying shame for the city of Charleston. When I grew up, I don't know how many council members there were downtown, but there were a lot more than 3, and there was a lot more than 4, and there were a lot more African American council members. The demographic trends that we've been contending with are manifestations of failure as a city, and that's everybody's responsibility. This should be a wake-up call to the city of Charleston. Okay, so I just think that needs to be noted for the record. City of Charleston has had more than 12 council members before. I think Councilmember Shades pointed out to me that there were 16 at one point. That was discussed at multiple points throughout this process. That could have kept every person currently on council and could have done a lot of different things. It was rejected harshly by some folks on council. So there were a lot of options that were discussed throughout this process. Frankly, I was very intrigued by the idea of expanding council, more representation, easier to do our jobs, smaller, tighter, compact districts. That ought to be something we maybe look at in 2030. But, I'll rest there. I think it's time for us to move on. I think we're doing what's in the best interest of the city by creating these compact districts. It's a shame that it's coming at the expense of Councilman Saccharin. I don't think necessarily it had to be that way, but if that was the way that he wants it to be, I respect that. And I think he's made our jobs a lot easier tonight by doing that. So with that being said, we're ready to vote.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to call the question. All in favor of M2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, if council would, could I entertain a motion that we withdraw M3 from the agenda? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is our approval. Sir? Scheduled program. Which would be approval of city council minutes just for September 13th. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our citizens participation period. I think just about everybody has left because they were here for the public hearing, but we will have this period available. Do we have some folks who signed up?
We do. And did you want us at a time limit? I think we just have a handful, maybe 2 or 3.
Madam Clerk, please call the names, and we'll ask you to please keep your comments to a minute and a half.
All right, Lynn Cool-J. And the time is a minute and a half.
Lynn Cool J, 7269 Commodore Road. of CAJM, Charleston Area Justice Ministries, and I return to ask that you add to an upcoming agenda the revitalization of Gadsden Creek. Mayor, council members, I notice in tonight's business that there are multiple stormwater management items, and yet simultaneously you turn your eyes away from the irreparable damage that the heavy concrete load of the next planned phase of West Edge development will do. The push for filling in Gadsden Creek and the adjacent wetlands lacks common sense and recognition of our changing climate. We could talk about sunny day flooding. Like the high tide we had yesterday, we had standing water in the west side, or we could talk about the abundance of water with Hurricane Ian. Another piece of this west side conversation, rising heat and how it impacts people's health. The Gadsden Green area is one of the hottest on the peninsula. The city's involved in the Charleston Heat Health Research Project. Scientists consider how buildings, along with other elements, contribute to heat index of an area. Once again, does it make sense to steal a natural ecosystem and trade it out for concrete? The massive grayscaping and harm to Gadsden Creek will exacerbate so many problems. Plans can change. Instead of rigidly holding on to an anachronistic development approach, adapt and refresh in the name of the whole community.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Edward Jones. Jody Yarborough.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jordy Yarborough with South Carolina Ports Authority. I will not take a full minute and a half, just came this evening to remind you all, we have another community engagement event on the future of Union Pier. It'll be this Thursday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Sanders Clyde Elementary School. So we did have a decent turnout on the one I spoke to you about before, but due to the hurricane, not as much as we would liked. We were planning this one anyway, but all that to say, please come out, and for everyone listening, please come out and share your thoughts. 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Sanders Clyde Elementary School. This Thursday, there will be parking at the gravel lot behind the cigar factory, and there also will be a food truck. I'm not sure what we decided on. Thank you.
Jordy, we do want to thank you for your civic engagement that you've been conducting with the plan, and thank you for doing that. I think
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very important to us that the community is well informed about this project. Thank you.
And those are all the speakers that we had signed up. We did receive 2 comments. Jerome Harris urged council to adopt the amendment to the HARC ordinance. The amendment was needed to provide a mechanism to ensure the commission could carry out its charge. Tony Daniels stated the roads were illegally blocked by his father's house. He said when asked to take the illegal closures down, they stated it would be dangerous to their children. And he asked how they would feel if it was their neighborhood. And those are all the comments we received.
Did we miss anyone? Would anybody like to be heard? Well, thank you everyone for being with us. Next up is our petitions and communications. First, we have the appointment of a code enforcement officer from TNT. All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is a request of approval of a proposed settlement agreement regarding a demolition denial of 1640 Folly Road.
Move for approval.
Second.
Excellent. Just quick background.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, this was a demolition request that was denied by DRB after a very quick mediation with all the parties. Staff has recommended that council approve this settlement agreement wherein it would be allowed to be demolished.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is an update on our comprehensive integrated water plan. I'm gonna call Dale Morris to come forward and set up the presentation with some guests we have from Black and Veatch. And is David Ball, is Mr. Ball with us as well?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Great. So good evening, members of council. You all know me, I'm Dale, and y'all funded this great opportunity for the city to procure a comprehensive integrated water plan. It's a recommendation from Dutch Dialogues. it's something we need to do. And you all funded the project in August. You provided some funding at the end of last year, and then additional funding in August. The team has started work. They're here. They went under contract in August. They're here to tell you who they are, what they're doing. I want to give you some context here because we sort of discovered this. So do you know how large the city of Charleston is in square miles? Pardon me? 155. So we looked at this, but anyway, so we're the 155. City of Boston is 90. City of Boston is 90 square miles. Atlanta is 136 square miles. Charleston's 155. Richmond, Virginia is just 63. Savannah is 113. New York City is 302. So the city of Charleston is just under half the size of the city of New York in square miles. So we have this water problem and we have this land problem. We have this wonderful thing going on here, but this shows the complexity of how we do a water plan here. And I just wanted to remind you all that this is sort of a large, complex area. So the team is here. They're going to give you a brief overview of their scope and their approach. Their initial observations, again, they've been at work for about 6 weeks. They're here to talk about the schedule. They have some homework for you all, so that's good. Most importantly, they're here to answer your questions as they start the work or sort of move into the next phases of work. And then one thing that I would like to ask of all of you, we've done this with Councilman Appel and Councilman Boyd. I would like the team to meet with each of you individually, off the record discussions. You know your districts, you know your people, you know your streets. They know the hydrology, they know the water. We can look at maps, but you know things that they don't. And we would like to pick up that information from you. So I will ping you, email you, text you, and ask for some time to do that, please. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Stephen O'Connell. Stephen O'Connell is local. He's with Black and Veatch. He's the water plan project manager. Been in the city for 15 years, works on a lot of the civil infrastructure in the city. And then David Wagner, my colleague from Dutch Dialogues, will wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to speak and kind of give you an update on the water plan. Exciting. So going to hand it over to David here in a few minutes to talk more of the specifics. But what we've set out to do is create a proactive, achievable, and manageable plan for the city to embrace its relationship with water. Building upon the plans that the city has already started, the many plans in the stormwater, the downtown plan that's upcoming, zoning rewrite. There's West Ashley plans, there's Johns Island plans. The goal is to take all those and produce a document that is implementable for the city to embrace the compound flooding that we're seeing and have seen for many, many decades. So just to give an introduction, appreciate Dale. So I'm with Black and Veatch. We've been working for the city of Charleston for almost 20 years. Our offices are right up on Calhoun Street. We've been in downtown for 20 years working for Charleston Water System on the wastewater side and also for the city of Charleston, the stormwater side. Have done a lot of work on the tunnels and the deep infrastructure in the peninsula, but also intimately familiar with Charleston as a whole. David Wagner we have him as the water plan architect, but he's with Wagner Ball. Very familiar with the Dutch Dialogues process, the land and water analysis. They are leading the water plan. Our team was set up to be very nimble. We have engineers, so Black and Veatch handles the civil solutions. That's the engineering side of the house. Moffitt Nickel, coastal engineering, experts in sea level rise and modeling and understanding the impacts of the coast. And then you have local biohabitats. So Keith Bowers, they are a national firm, well-known in nature-based solutions. And Keith is located in Charleston. So implementing nature-based solutions, implementing gray infrastructure. This team is set up to do all of that and understand how that can help the city manage its water. We also have the Community Solutions Consulting. AJ Davis is on our team. He was also part of a lot of the comp plan work. And so we're set up to be nimble. The first phase is the water plan, but this team is able to transition based on
the needs of the city into also an OA role, owner's advisor role, if we ever went forward with the core process. So our team is set up to, any component of our team can be a leader. But right now, Wagner Ball is leading the water plan effort. So as many of you know, we just had Hurricane Ian. It was, in my opinion, a near miss. We were very lucky to not have a compound flooding impacts that we were anticipating. But the city is currently updating the sea level rise strategy, and you'll see that on the left. That's set for a 25-year planning horizon. That's also what the water plan is set for. So 25 years is set because that's manageable. We think that in 25-year horizon, you can implement strategies, but it also needs to be adaptable. We need to be looking out beyond 25 years. First strategy is 25 years in, and we're going to take the sea level rise strategy, take a look at the hurricanes that near misses, and now on the right there, spaghetti plot, but that's showing all the hurricanes that have either hit Charleston or been near misses since the late 1800s. So that compounded flood effect is what we're looking at. So the planning area is the urban growth boundary as defined by Charleston. Dale mentioned the size. It's a very large project. The urban growth boundary is defined by the dashed lines, but outside of that is the watershed impact. So bigger than the urban growth boundary is the watersheds that impact those planning areas. We've divided the city into 6 planning areas. You have James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley, Peninsula, Daniel Island, and Cainhoy. Each of those have different issues to deal with. Each of them have different concerns. The peninsula, for the most part, is built out. Different solutions are going to be implementable there versus Cainhoy, which is yet to be built out. So we divided it in according to planning area because of the different solutions and strategies we were planning to implement throughout our water plan development. What you can see on the right-hand side is the scale. So flood risk is the blue, and you translate that onto the map. And this is today. So this isn't even thinking 25 years out. Sea level rise is another 14 to 18 inches on top of that blue. So what you can see is in a normal high tide event, a normal flooding event, the areas that are currently being impacted is only going to increase. The middle bar there is the areas that we're talking about, the compound flood zone and adaptation. So there's the areas where we need to think about land use. How do we use the land? How do we adapt the land to handle that future flooding? And then the green is the highland. So that's typically where we would show, yeah, this land is high, still impacts from groundwater maybe and some surge potential, but less so on the tidal side. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to David.
It's nice to be back here in Charleston, and like to take off the visitor thing, but maybe the security people wouldn't like that. I went forward without meaning to go forward. This is the adaptation strategy chart that was in the comp plan land and water analysis. And, you know, it really is a good approach, which is saying that you're looking to reserve some of the bottom space, but in places like Cainhoy with the trees, you're looking also to reserve some of that because you've got this ecological value. But this pattern of adaptation is really where architects like I think to work. So you can adapt vertically and you can also adapt horizontally. As you look in time, these strategies are going to be needed. We're at the very beginning of a process. You know, tonight we'd really love to hear one thing that would give us a direction in the work we need to do. Anything, we're looking now for questions. But a whiteboard exercise to look at the different ways of flooding and the different areas, and this isn't right necessarily, but which are the factors that cause floods in the different areas? You see the peninsula really has risk of all, right? But if you start to look at this and we start to analyze this, we'll be trying to convey this in ways that you can understand. You know, this document, this water plan, Dale wants to make sure we have technical stability information, but it's also a social document. You have to be able to convey to people what's in their self-interest, how they're going to live here. So it's both a social and a technical effort. This picture was taken back by Jared Bramlett, actually. And, you know, I understand the church is going to be repurposed. But I think the feeling we had as we did Dutch Dialogues years back was that there was space there for water. And we could, in fact, find a way to put some of this inadvertent water in intentional places. My caution is it's going to be very hard to find space in Charleston. The real estate pressures are real. I don't know if we said this yet, I don't believe, but we looked it up and Charleston's 156 square miles. It's a lot of land. San Francisco's 49 square miles and we can't find space. I think it's a matter of commitment and intention to develop it, because if we sell everything we got, we may end up with less than we could have. So a long time ago, this guy, Alexander Pope, said that. And I think it really is the guide for this project. Each place has its own nature, its own place. When Charleston was young, Alexander Pope was writing early 18th century. So a long time ago, he said, consult the genius of the place and all, right? So which is the particular character of Cainhoy or Daniel Island or West Ashley or the peninsula? Each place has its own nature and genius, and that's what this work is going to try to find. The particular opportunity and the nature of the condition we have in each of the areas. We know, this isn't meant to be a lecture or anything, but we know we have these marsh edges, which are one of the defining characteristics of this beautiful city. But we know that it's dangerous there for people to put buildings, habitation. You know, you can see there in West Ashley, you know, it gets a little bit close. And so this margin along the marsh edge is fraught. How do we occupy it? When do we not occupy it? When do we not allow people to move into that condition in times ahead? What is and what may be is going to be a negotiation, I believe. But we also have space that's higher. And you can say, well, Maybank is already developed. Well, not really. You know, it's been developed once or so, but it can be redeveloped and you can get more density in that. And if you can't, you know, often you come from New Orleans and after Katrina, people were all, you can't have density. Well, density can be your advantage too. And so I think if you look at these corridors that are all drifting, if you notice, we love that. The landscape is always depositing in that direction. So all your high corridors should be analyzed, and we'll be looking at that not only for development, for how we manage the water in those conditions. But it's all got to fit together. You know, if the Corps of Engineers builds a wall and the city of Charleston builds a pump station and it's not coordinated, there's no elegance in that. It's like, you know, words without rhythm or something. So we've got to find a way to integrate all these systems that occur. That was a Dutch Dialogues diagram, and this was the work we were doing for the city with the peninsula thing. How do we put this together? And it's really a matter of efficiency, right? Resource efficiency, economic efficiency, time. How do we do something brilliant, which hasn't really been done in the United States, to integrate all these things? We have this approach that we work from the ground up, you know, through the ecology, the ground, the water, the biodiversity, into the infrastructure and into the habitation. Our Dutch friends will say that the slow layers, the bottom layer, and the things we're hung up about, where we build our houses and have our building, those are the easiest things to change. You really can't change the geology. You can pollute it. But the ecological aspect is the slower aspect, and the infrastructure is really where we spend our public money. So this is the system of investment that we look at, with the longer investment being the earth. And as we go forward, where do we put the money? We can use check valves tide gates and things like that for a period of time. We can use piping upgrades for a period of time. When does that system become ineffective? When do you have to shift over, adapt it to another system? And how do we have no regrets in these ways we invest? Because, in a way, architects are known to spend money, but we like to use it well. And so our job for you is to try to give you advice that you can make better investments over time and not put too much that you're going to regret because you should have spent it another way. So wrapping up that, and I'll let you come back, Stephen, is we've looked at data. That's really the phase we're in. You can see there at the first line that there's some stormwater models available, but they're for projects and it's not typical. There's a lot of information missing. But that ties into, well, which of these systems are going to be useful anyway as sea level rises 25 years, but we're looking directionally to the future. We say 25 years, but if we gave you advice that was bad in 50 years, that would be, I think, short-sighted. But we got to get you first to the 25. So what is that threshold? Building scale, avoiding slab on grade in low country is not a bad idea, right? That will help you all the time. Looking at streets and looking at roads as water management elements, that will help you. Don't look at one without the other, look at both together. And then things will happen in trends and they'll happen at once and there'll be cycles. And we got to be ready to react. Last week, I think it was only last week when the storm might have come here, I was worried that maybe it hit us and we got what the Corps had drawn and not what we need to draw, what we need to be ready to build. Because, that event could trigger expenditure. We need to be ready so that we can spend the money in a way that's worth this great city. So I'll let Stephen wrap and tell you where we are.
David. So when we set out, this is a 15-month program. We're planning to deliver the water plan document at the end of 2023. Right now, we're just in the very beginning stages, the very front of this graph. So we're in the data collection phase right now. We're going to assemble, look at the data we have, understand where the gaps are, and then start divisioning from there. This group is going to get back together in Charleston. We're going to have meetings with each of the planning areas. We're going to bring in outside experts. We're going to bring in communities, members, folks who have intimate knowledge of the areas, and meet and talk and figure out how to vision and plan for each of these planning basins. And that will be first quarter of 2023. So that's our next big milestone as we move forward in the water plan. And with that, yeah, we'd be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, I would just, I had the pleasure of meeting with Mr. Morris, Mr. O'Connell, and Mr. Wagner. It was well worth a couple hours I spent with them. Learned a lot, and would definitely encourage all of you to take the time and spend as much time as you can with these guys. They're there to listen and learn, and we can learn a lot from them. So thank you all for everything you did for us.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And yes, I am looking forward to that meeting, Mr. Morris. I call on him often. So it might not be the appropriate time for this question, but a lot of the issues on James Island, I mean, from what I understand, a lot of our stormwater are newly, some of our stormwater restrictions on new development are really great. It provides needed infrastructure, holding, things like that. Again, above my pay grade, but what we see is the old infrastructure. So I am curious about where this water plan and all of that will sort of tie into that part of the, whether it's discussion or action steps that need to be taken when we're talking about, some of our flooding is due to the old infrastructure either being not properly done or not properly maintained, whatever it is. How does this tie into that? Does that make sense?
All that I say is Matt is the stormwater director, and I am not smart enough to
think and close to how Matt thinks. He's wonderful. So it's a great asset and you all praise him and he deserves it. So his team is looking very carefully. We've already met with Matt. This team has already met with Matt. We know Matt. We will continue to work with them. So that coordination is essential. But one of the things that's crucial, Councilman Parker, is what you said is we have old infrastructure that wasn't maintained in the proper way over decades. Okay, we need to fix that. Is that infrastructure properly sized when it was designed? Is it still working? And then what has changed with all the development around it? There's possibly too many roofs and streets to infiltrate water, and the groundwater is probably higher. So you have all these conditions. The water plan team is going to fuss around with this and look at it to make recommendations about this. You can see some adaptations that the city has already taken out in West Ashley. These are things that I do not think are going to be inappropriate for James Island. We're going to have to work with you, with all the other members of council, with the community on how do we phase this in over time. This is not something that we're going to say tomorrow, here's $3 million to spend, but here is a strategy over the next 5 or 7 years for investment of how we make this place safer. And this also takes Matt's team working with, implementing the stormwater design manual requirements carefully, working with developers so that we do not make the mistakes that we know now from the past. There are things we know about parts of the city that are not yet developed. We better not make those mistakes. We will do a great disservice to future residents and current and future taxpayers if we're not very careful. So we have to work with this. And I think, there's a lot of parts of the city that are possible for redevelopment, but let's do that in a smart way. And this team will help us with that. And so that integration is implicit in this. We hope it's useful for you, and I will send you a text or a call tomorrow about to schedule this. Good. Do you want to say anything?
It's a renovation. Everything, you have to use everything you got. Right? But you might.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
You might be able to improve the nature of the ditch. That'd be a great improvement, right? If the bioswale became better, so, small things can add up. But we work with what we got, right? And try to think the best that we can do, right?
Oh, well, and just in discussions that I've had, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I apologize. Just because those tax dollars are so, those monies are so limited. So Ian showed us, some of my area, some of my district is we have to make sure that we're utilizing those money the best way we can to help some of these people in the communities. So
The economist in me will tell you that your first dollar spent must have the highest return on investment. So when you have limited resources, you have to spend it on the highest return. This is sort of common sense, right? We have to go there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to echo Councilman Gregg's sentiment. I had the pleasure and opportunity to meet with this group and talk about some of the unique issues that we face over in West Ashley and James Island. And I thought it was very beneficial because we all have very unique sets of circumstances that we deal with in our respective areas. The question I have is, when I think about what's necessary to kind of get from these best practices to implementation, I see a host of legal issues and challenges. And I just wanted to, at a very 10,000 foot level, I'm not looking to get into the weeds on any of this. Is that going to be a part of this product, sort of an assessment of sort of the regulatory and legal landscape as it relates to what municipalities can do, what are some of the issues, so we can have a clear understanding of that when it's time for implementation? Because I will tell you, the city is no stranger to litigation over our stormwater regulations and things of that nature. Some of the stuff that's in our comp plan, some of the stuff that we're talking about right now is so far beyond, it's necessary, but it's so far beyond anything we've ever done. I just think that it'll be very helpful that we have those issues at least somewhat vetted on the front end so that it's not a bunch of great ideas that have an implementation gap. So.
Thank you, Councilman Rappel. I think as we become aware, we can clearly state them. You know, when we're dealing with water, there are always human issues and legal issues. They're special, right? But I think this is where it becomes a team effort, because some of you have attributes that we may not have. And the more you can clarify what you know, and the more we can record that, and the more we can then be trying to get that path forward. But in our past efforts, we've always been trying to identify the obstacles to implementation. You know, it's got to be practical. Sometimes we're told no because the law's not practical. Can you change that? Maybe locally, right? But this is where it's a team effort, you know. But our job is to clarify, is to state as clearly as possible the things that you help us identify, that we know that you can show us.
All right. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you all for that update and report. If you were going to wave a yellow caution flag, what would that caution flag sound like?
We all have to answer that. Let Mikey, huh? You know, I think inertia, that we do things the way we've always done them, that the developer's entitled to that. Even if we think it's not right, this is going to be a problem. But we said we'd do it in 2010, 2015. We said that's a caution. Don't put more assets and people in harm's way. It's not that hard to see where the edges are. It's not that hard to understand where, but you know, people have their livelihood, their real estate investments, all that's got to be negotiated, right? So the caution is that we will flag in our belief in that we can do the right thing, do the smart thing. The caution is that we expect less of ourselves than we should, because you know, you don't get better by, you have to be smarter to get better, right? I think Charleston has to step up and believe it can do the right thing, even if it's difficult.
All right. Anyone else? Did y'all want to reply further?
Yeah,
Yeah.
less philosophical than David, but to me, it's integration of your existing systems. The stormwater system, it's a very complex system, and not getting that integrated correctly into our vision and plans is a red flag for me. So.
Perfect. Councilmember Waring.
I just look forward to meeting with you all one-on-one. One of the areas that we have West Ashley, James Island, some of the suburban areas, problems is there's a lot of commercial areas that were built prior to stormwater drain through residential areas. If they were built today, they would be required to have retainage on their own site. Councilmember Appel always talks about the term grandfather being done away with. He's right about that. Those areas need to be brought into compliance, because a lot of the areas that flood is not because of sea level rise. Granted, I'm a believer in sea level rise. A lot of these areas that's flooding, it was because of poor design, that instead of running it to the public system, it's cheaper to run it through a residential area, and these residential areas are suffering without no correction. Somehow we have to come back. I thought we had already passed a ordinance 3-4 years ago that would bring old shopping centers, office complexes, etc., into compliance, to require them to come into compliance. So hopefully that's going to be a part of y'all's study when we get to talk. Thank you.
We did, but you have to have a substantial improvement. What's the what?
I understand, but we need to get beyond the substantial improvement. I mean, we just, this is a zoning issue. But you remember when they had the adult bookstore and the neighborhood came out against it? And eventually went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they had a certain period of time to move into another area. It's the same thing as we're dealing with here. These commercial areas cannot continue to run their water into residential areas without retaining some of it for some period of time on their own site.
I agree.
So that's the type of legislation you're talking about, getting the laws passed. I think that will help.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. We all look for, yes. Dale.
Yes, if I may, so David mentioned the word renovation. We are going to continue to renovate. We have renovated the city in West Ashley, in James Island, on the peninsula, right? We're going to continue to renovate it. Maybank is developed. David and I have had this discussion, but it can be developed in a different way or added to in a smarter way going forward, right? This is a renovation, and this is what we're going to try to give you this strategy. It is very clear to me, Councilman Shade asked a question, and I really had to think about it. What is my one yellow flag? If I have to give you one, I'm going to give you 1.5. I'm going to give you 1.5. One is we don't do what you just said, that we don't take the opportunity when a new building is put in place or another building, an area is redeveloped. In our, what we call these middle areas, these adapt zones, if we don't take advantage to store stormwater, manage stormwater, infiltrate stormwater there, we're going to regret it. And my other very clear observation is, please, let's do whatever we can to develop wisely or develop smartly or not develop at all if that's possible in the lowest areas of the city. Let's just not do that, because we know that is going to cost more and more and more money to address with the rising seas. That's my yellow flag. Sorry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for the presentation, the update. We're so glad you're on board. We're going to get this done. We're all looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, we have our council committee reports. First up, Committee on Public Works, Councilmember Ware. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please. Oh,
No, actually, actionable items, I'd agree with that. So I certainly agree with the motion. I did want Mr. Fountain to have a presentation on his his plan that he's suggesting to reallocate monies to hire folk, at least come and address that. So let's pass the actionable items and then.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Fountain, thank you.
all right. On the actionable items, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Fountain.
So, Mr. Chairman, we did present a relatively detailed, though somewhat short, at least for the Stormwater Department presentation in the Public Works Utilities Committee. I can certainly highlight some of the topics we discussed. We basically went through the current staffing of the department based on a crew level discussion of basically how many crews were available in different fields we had within hand clean, machine clean, pipe clean, project management, and then regulatory. We presented a path forward for what we feel would be a adjustment, basically reorganization of those crew levels and the work tasks employees are given that we think would lead towards being able to come to a full staffing pretty much of those positions. We identified an additional recommendation of working towards like a skill-based progression system for our, especially for our field ops employees. Basically, you pick up major attributes in your professional career development, like you obtain your CDL license, which lets you drive heavy equipment. You learn how to drive a backhoe. You learn how to drive an excavator, how to operate an excavator. You basically have automatic pay increases associated with that rather than having to wait for a position to become available. We then provide that training and mentoring to the employees to help them get there. And it basically builds a career tracking. It's a way for cities to attract employees at lower skill, lower pay positions typically, but show them there's a career future. Similar to what you'd see in a lot of professional trades crafts, like if you go into plumbing or if you go into like electrical work, right? You come in and you apprentice and then you journeyman and then you're master tradescraft and you can train others. So I think that's a great way for us to try to deal with some of our issues with employee attraction and retention, because you show people that there's a career and an employer who values you. Something we can do relatively straightforward with the way the department's set up. Again, we looked at some other and discussed some other organizational adjustments for other positions as well. Happy to get into those in any kind of level of detail anyone would ever want to hear. We did identify basically what that would end up costing for the field operations group. It runs to roughly $570,000, and that assumes completely full staffing, every position fully staffed for the entire year. For the engineering and MS4 group, it's about $360,000. Those also, the department currently is budgeted, and we've talked about this in some detail. The department is currently budgeted for $400,000 of salary savings, which of course, if you went to a completely fully staffed, fully functional department, you wouldn't have salary savings budgeted back into your other budgets. That's sort of we talked about in the committee, it's sort of an impractical position to get to. You never are completely fully staffed. You always have natural turnover that leaves positions vacant for some period unless you're going to overstaff or overfill positions. But it does end up being a realistic cost of about $1 million if you were to get, again, to fully staffing on an annual basis. Again, the city stormwater department budget is about $12 million. So it's not insignificant. It's not impossible. We identified a few funding mechanisms you could get there with. You could basically look at our current budget for our indefinite delivery contracts. Sits at about that amount of money. You could say basically you will run indefinite delivery contracts with any actual achieved vacancies. So that would fund the work to hire contractors to help fill the roles of the people who are not currently staffed. And it kind of makes for an elegant balance, especially since any plan you implement would likely take quite a bit of time to come to fruition of hiring. We don't have that big an unemployed population in Charleston, as most people know. So it's harder to draw those employees quickly into positions, even if they do become more attractive. We also looked at an option to reduce the budgeted staff. You have to reduce your budget staff by about 15% in order to basically make this cost neutral. That would still be a significant increase in the number of employed employees, since we're less than 50% staffed in field ops and more like 20 or 30% vacant in professional staff. So you still see an overall increase in staffing. You just see a decrease in budgeted positions. The third option was to increase the collection efficiency within our stormwater utility, which is something we need to do anyway. We've talked about this. Councilman Waring's been a big advocate of it. We did a utility rate study. We're likely under collecting revenue versus example or corollary cities to us for population size, city area. A lot of that is because our stormwater utility program is quite old for the city. It was actually created in the 90s. So it hasn't really aged into modern billing software and billing systems. We've still worked with CWS, who kind of lets us piggyback on their bills, which is a challenging way to work through the billing. So we see there's likely some better efficiency that we could work through and somewhat budget neutral in that respective. And then lastly, of course, there's the typical way to increase revenue, which would be a fee increase. That amount of money would run to about $1 per month per ERU, which is the typical residential rate. I'm happy to get into that in any kind of level of excruciating detail that anyone would like to have. I have a number of spreadsheets that I can pull up if anyone would like to see them.
Councilmember Gregg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fountain. What's the current stormwater fees? $20 per resident per year that we pay on our CWS bill?
No, so you currently pay $10 per month for residential property. So it's $120 per year, unless you're in an apartment where you pay normally 75% of that, or it's into the building unit.
And you're saying that one additional dollar per month would fund this?
Correct.
Okay, that's like a no-brainer, is in my opinion. So I would bring that to council, but or at least bring it to the Public Works Committee.
Yes, sir. All right. Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Fountain, pull all this together.
Yeah.
And we had a storm event. So in less than 2 weeks, he pulled that together to get it back as a request from council. So again, Mr. Fountain, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Is okay, Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I just add real quick comment to it?
Oh, sure.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think, one thing, it was 2 weeks to sort of finalize it into presentation form. I mean, it's something that we've been talking about at committee, I think, for a long time. We've been working with the HR department with Ryan Landry for quite a while, looking at things like the skill-based progressions, something we can do for internal restructuring, because we talk about this a lot. We've been understaffed. It's an incredibly important function we perform. As much as I joke about the excruciating accuracy, like, it is really important to have a real plan of how you do this, not just kind of throw money at it and hope somehow the problem goes away, right? That's not a good solution that leads to good results. So we we do have that detail because it is so important to have, good, high quality staff who come to work and are excited and do good work. And I think you hopefully have seen that in the results that we've been able to get as a department. And with roughly double the amount of staff, I think we could certainly accomplish additional work, which is what we're, again, roughly budgeted to have. It's not, we're asking to double the budgeted amount of staff, only come back to budgeted.
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I enjoyed the committee meeting. Thank you for letting me be there and make a few comments, but just really quick, I just wanted to, say thank you for all of the trucks, and we had some communities that houses, really flooded. So whether it was stormwater or environmental services, I mean, they were out there in full force helping these folks. And that's what I received from the city residents. You made comment about community outreach and as well as our environmental services updates for this week. I just hope that we can, I know Becca Hopkins might not be here, but maybe that's something that we can get out this week or within the next week or so. I know I'm kind of bouncing back to B1, but just getting some environmental service updates out there. And that's it. I mean, anything, that I'm a big proponent of getting these ditches cleared, but I need to know how best to do that, especially in my district where we have the town and county. I hope we continue this conversation. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, back to Councilmember Gray.
Sorry, one other question. When was the last time the stormwater fee was raised?
So it was raised when we created the stormwater department in 2018, I believe was the year.
3 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago.
And
That's
It's
not,
been since I got elected. We did it one time, I think.
all right,
Yeah.
but it's not indexed to inflation or anything.
That's correct. So we have had part of the challenges. Of course, there has been no increase over the last 4 years where we've seen some pretty significant construction inflation, especially in the region.
Okay, and then, sorry, last question. Do you know how much money we get out of that $10? How much do we collect out of that?
Yeah. So basically each dollar per month translates to roughly $1 million per year. So there's roughly a $12 million revenue off of the current $10 per month.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we had intended on, considering an additional increase, but we wanted to have the plan first. And that's what this is all about, is having a solid plan before we justified an additional increase. Right. All right. So thank you all. And thank you, Matt, for all that discussion. Thank you, Councilmember Waring, for bringing that to your committee. Next up, Committee on Traffic and Transportation, Councilmember Brady.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And like Councilmember Waring, I'm going to reserve an hour and a half just in case we need to, talk about everything here tonight. So first we got an update. There was some moving around on the agenda. But we started on the agenda item with Harbor View school traffic update. They were happy to report from the school district. They have a 63% expanded capacity to house cars on the Harbor View Elementary School campus. As a result of that, in the afternoon, the backup onto the street is down from 34 minutes to 2 minutes. 2 minutes in the afternoon. Yeah. And 11 minutes in the morning. So the morning at pickup and drop off, or I should say drop off, is a little bit longer. And they acknowledge that, but they've done, the plan was quite extensive, and they've done everything that they can to minimize the impacts to the one resident whose driveway is referenced here in the chamber most often. Next, we had a very exhaustive update from Deborah Datoma at Charleston County. We will get the PowerPoint presentation that she shared with us to Robbie, and then Robbie will get that out to council, because the amount of projects I was quite impressed with, and I know members of the committee were as well, and they are quite too numerous for me to list here in the report, including all the resurfacing projects, Glen McConnell widening, Main Road segment AAC, Savannah Highway capacity improvements. I mean, and that was just like the highlights, and then there was quite a lot. So we'll be sure to get that out. What's coming before you tonight, out of traffic and transportation is a speed limit reduction ordinance where we are seeking to eliminate the public hearing requirement for speed limit reductions in order to streamline the process and make it a little bit more responsive. The Traffic and Transportation Committee had a public hearing on a speed limit reduction and the entire meeting lasted 4 minutes. So it's not required under the statute. We don't think it's entirely necessary. And so that we can move that forward faster for citizens. That's before you tonight. And then Mr. Somerville gave an update on the valet parking RFP. Unfortunately, no proposals were submitted as part of that RFP, but Neighborhood Services and T&T are talking to the businesses to make sure that valet parking in the spots that we set aside for that are something that they're still interested in, which I have a feeling it with some more engagement that it will be. And then the parking meter update, we received proposals on we'll receive proposals on this coming Friday with the review taking place on November 2nd. And then that process will continue moving from there. And that is the extent from my report. And I would move approval of the speed limit reduction ordinance.
Second. Councilmember Gregg. Oh, okay. Any questions or discussion? Wasn't there one question we wanted to ask?
I did have a discussion question. So I was going to ask our legal counsel to provide some legal background on the Frampton Street modification. This is news to me, but that road has been modified since 1973, which I thought we all might benefit from learning this history.
Screech.
Good evening. I know that the legal department has been asked in the past to weigh in on the validity of the process that took. I know that the legal department has been asked in the past to weigh in on the validity of the process that occurred in 1976, I believe, for these traffic diversions to take place at Frampton and Fairway. Our opinion on that has not changed. We view that to have been a lawful process under South Carolina Code 527-150. These are alterations to city streets. It is not a closure nor an abandonment. The statutory process to do that has not been completed.
In your opinion, it was done legally by the city of Charleston?
Yes, that continues to be the legal department's position.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Councilmember Parker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just discussion. I am always very impressed with Charleston County's update. I see it at James Island Intergovernmental. And I know that Councilwoman Honeycutt, the presentations that I've seen in the past couple of weeks and all of the projects happening on James Island, I'm extremely excited about, to see all of that happening on James Island is really exciting. So I really appreciate the county for giving that update.
First, Councilmember Shade, then Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chairman, what was the update given for the project in West Ashley that we commonly call the suicide merge area, but it's the Old Town Road, Sam Rittenberg improvement?
That was one of many updates that we received.
So
what is that progress report on that? Because it was supposed to start at the end of 2022. Now I heard it's 2023, and now I heard funding that wasn't appropriated for it. So where are we?
I will be happy to provide you again with the presentation that she gave, but it was about 50 something odd updates that we.
So I did ask a question about that project. So if I may
go ahead,
relay that she mentioned there wasn't enough funding to proceed. And so they plan to phase the project to do first the intersection improvements at Orange Grove Road and Sam Rittenberg. And then secondly, and she said, I asked specifically, she said that it was based on the number of accidents that had occurred. So it was basically a safety decision. And then a second phase would occur sometime later, although she wasn't specific on the timing, with all the basically pedestrian improvements that occur up and down Old Town Road and Sam Rittenberg Boulevard. So I think on the Orange Grove Road, phase one, she mentioned they still had a couple of right-of-way
Yeah,
acquisitions.
that right away acquisition.
To take care before they could move forward. It felt like a year away from even phase one getting going. Councilmember Rappel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to thank Chairman Brady for entertaining the update regarding the Harborview elementary school issue, which is ongoing. I want to thank our staff, Robbie, his predecessor, Mr. Benjamin, our legal department. We've now had 2 lawyers look at this. They've come to the same conclusion. I'm satisfied with the results of this process. I think the city has done everything right. Contrary to what you may have heard, the city has taken numerous steps and actions out in this area to include striping, additional enforcement, things of that nature. I want to thank the Charleston County School District, Mr. Barowie, for all the work they've done on site. I consider this matter closed. I don't think our staff needs to spend any additional time in furtherance of this. I think we've documented the record appropriately. I can tell you the Country Club 2 neighborhood is overwhelmingly in support of what the city has done here. And I want to let my colleagues know I've tried my best to resolve this issue. It is an unresolvable issue, and we'll just leave it at that. But I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in this. And I just don't think we need to spend a whole lot more time and energy and limited resources and bandwidth on this. I think the record is satisfactory, and I just want to express my appreciation for that.
And I would add that we had a public hearing as part of that process as well, and there was not action that was recommended to come forward to council as a result of that process.
Councilmember.
And just very briefly, I missed the beginning of Councilmember Brady's report, and I'm sorry about that, but I agree with you. And one of the things that was reported to us today from the school district point of view is in an effort to alleviate the traffic congestion problems, specifically at the intersections and out on Harborview Road, the school district not only came up with a plan, put human resources towards it. They spent, I'm trying to remember, $434,000 building a second lane in front of the school so they can double up the cars coming in and coming out to expedite the flow of traffic through there. $450,000, which is not a small amount of money when you're in the education business. So they took it seriously and will continue to take it seriously. And I think that really came across loud and clear today. And they really put their money where their commitment was to that. So I agree. It's case closed, other than just continuing to work with the school district to make sure that that intersection at Harborview Road remains safe. Because one thing they did tell us is they've got 2-minute backups in the afternoons and 11-minute backups in the morning on Harborview Road. So that's something that we got to flush through. So anyway, I thought it was a super interesting report for them today.
Right. Thank you. So there's a committee report overall, including the motion to, or the ordinance to reduce maximum speed limit protocol on the floor. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is our committee on
Move for approval.
Ways and Means as amended, because we did add a couple of items to the agenda for spending. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, we have bills for second reading. I think
1 through 10.
we have approval 1 through 10, and number 9 was amended. So can we say approve 1 through 10 as amended? Yes, sir. Thank you. And we had a second. Any discussion, questions on any of those? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now for third reading,
So moved.
ratification. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That leaves us with just one item for first reading, which I think was a zoning matter on Rosedale Drive. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now, we had on our agenda a call, an item for an executive session, but this was related to an executive session that was reported out on by our real estate committee, with basically the conclusion that we would have staff do some further analysis and come back to council with
more recommendations on how to proceed, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
So I think the consensus was there's no need for the executive session tonight. How about that? So can I have a motion to amend the agenda by withdrawing the item for an executive session?
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Somebody please make one or two statements while I finish signing our ordinances for this evening. Or we can just give me a few more seconds. Everybody's talked out. Our next regular meeting is going to be October 25th. Is there any further business to come before us this evening? Hearing none, we stand adjourned.